OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
It is 7:30. A very good morning to you. This is OTB AM. Eoin and Sheahan with you right the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. And it has already been quite the morning of events in Tokyo. If you're just waking up, do not fear. We will have you covered over the course of the next few hours as we look back on Mona McSharry, as we look back on the heartbreak of the Irish Rugby Sevens, and build up to what should be a massive week on the water for the Irish Rowers as well. You can tweet us at Off The Ball if there's anything you want to get in touch about, or you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream as well. Sheahan, how has the adjustments to Tokyo time been for you?
I was just going to say, Eoin, I mean, I'm absolutely wrecked. I mean, last night I decided, I was going to stay up as long as possible, and managed until around 2 o'clock, 2:30. Said I was going to get up and kind of rewatch Mona McSharry's final back. But like last night I watched the triathlon, watched Carolyn Hayes' epic effort in the run to finish 23rd, and then got sucked in, as you tend to do in the Olympics, to a random event, and my heart was fully invested in Serbia versus Canada in the women's basketball last night, and Timmy Boom Shakalaka McCarthy, calling them from downtown. It was just excellent. And then said I'd get some sleep, wake up, rewatched Mona McSharry, rewatched Aidan Walsh. But I'm absolutely wrecked. I don't know what day it is. I don't know what time it is. But I don't know how you're adjusting. But it's not easy.
I've got limited sympathy for you, Sheahan, because that is very, very self-inflicted. If you stay up to watch Serbia against Canada in the basketball, I think you deserve limited sympathy, to be honest. The key is just get up a couple of hours early. I was up around 4:30 this morning, and just watch the recorded thing back, and you can fast forward all the ad breaks. I fast forward bits of Serbia, Canada. I wanted to hear a bit of Timmy McCarthy. Let's face it, that is the star attraction of the basketball tournaments themselves. But I don't know, Sheahan. I think you played it wrong. I think it is the key thing to do is just sleep, click record, and get up with enough time to actually just watch all the Irish people and all the other glamorous events that may be on throughout the night.
There is a tactic, yeah. There's definitely better ways to do it than the way in which I went about it. But like the Olympics app is an excellent resource for anyone who's trying to keep track, because you can filter it to follow the Irish athletes and follow the time in a 24 o'clock format, and it does make it a little bit easier. But when you see the list of times and you see that, okay, the Irish athletes are, in some cases, some days when the rowing is on, obviously with the tropical storm or the arriving at the moment, the typhoon, there's no rowing until tomorrow morning. But ordinarily you'd have rowing at like 1 a.m, 2 a.m. our time. You'll have boxing probably at 3 a.m. or something else, and like it goes right the way through until 2 or 3 o'clock the next afternoon. So you'd want to have serious endurance, but and especially when there's moments of heartbreak as well, you kind of it saps and sucks the energy right out of you. So you're, if you have a top performance, like Carolyn Hayes kind of, I wasn't tired during the triathlon because I was really, really enjoying it. And to have a person called Duffy winning it, I mean, that just makes it, because I'm quickly Googling to see, is she Irish? Flora Duffy.
What did you find actually? I didn't get as far as Googling that.
We absolutely cannot claim her. There seems to be no Irish heritage. There must be way back, but I mean, it's still a great story because she's Bermuda's first ever gold medalist for a small island. And then I think they only have one other previous medal. It was in Montreal in 1976. So you see these stories and you get really, really involved in them. And really, really tough conditions as well. You even saw the British athlete, Georgia Taylor-Brown. She finished second, but she had a puncture on her last lap on the cycle, which, she cycled the last kilometre or something with a punctured wheel, and obviously fell back a few places and eventually clambered back to win a silver medal. And then Katie Zafarez, the American favourite, finished back in third. So really, really interesting story. And Carolyn Hayes has been on this show before, and she's just an extraordinary person who only decided to turn pro in 2018, I think, at the age of 30. She's a junior doctor as well. Really, really good story. And she came from, I think, 40th out of the water to finish 23rd. So really good run from her.
I think the British athlete might have caught Duffy eventually if she didn't have the puncture. Like, the cycling race was crazy. It was like they were cycling on grease for the entire thing. There was so many different, just almost slow motion falls where the cyclists themselves knew that they were going to fall and they were just powerless to do it. Just such dry heat for so long, and then rainfall on top of that. It just makes for terrible conditions. So yeah, Flora Duffy was our claim early in the night, even though we've got no claim whatsoever. Our second tenuous claim of the night was none other than Siobhan Bernadette Haughey, of course, representing Hong Kong in the 200 metre semis in the swimming pool, of course. A grandniece of Charles Haughey. I think we were all, everybody watching that when that came through on commentary, were like, oh, hold on, what? What is going on here? And came second to Ariarne Titmus in her semi, like with a brilliant performance, qualifies for the final and will be in with a shout of a medal. He will be in with a shout of a medal. And I guess we didn't see the Australian coach on that particular instance, Dean Boxall, going overly crazy. We'll get to Mona McSharry in just a moment, but like, I mean, you've completely taken to Boxall as the hero of the game so far.
I mean, like, we claim people, and yeah, we do. Like, I even spoke to Kathleen Noble on Saturdays off the ball about, like, she's the rower representing Uganda, who turns out has grandparents in Enniskillen in County Fermanagh and in Newbliss here in County Monaghan. So absolutely claiming her. But Dean Boxall, I mean, this guy is something else. Like you mentioned, Ariarne Titmus, his swimmer, like, set the internet alight after she won that gold medal and beating Katie Ledecky, who is, by all accounts, an absolute queen of the pool. Still only 20 years of age, you'd almost forget. But the final of that women's 400 metre freestyle the other day, like, the celebrations were unlike anything I'd ever seen. And like the Guardian, I think, summed it up quite nicely online. I was reading this morning. They said his extraordinary, if slightly questionable, celebration saw him striding through the spectators' area, pumping the air, ripping his mask off, and hip thrusting against a transparent barrier, which summed it up perfectly. Like, the hip thrust really, like, it was already one of the craziest celebrations you'll ever see, and then the hip thrust, just, what are you doing? But then in the back of your head, you're thinking, yep, absolutely go for it. I mean, you've dethroned Katie Ledecky, the 5-time gold medalist, her first defeat in an individual event at the Olympics. So, you know, and then the Japanese, I guess it's one of the ushers behind him as well, looks in complete shock at what he's doing. She's just like, this is crazy. She's clapping it. She doesn't know whether she should clap it because it's probably the oddest celebration you'll ever see. But no, that for me is one of the highlights of the Olympic Games so far. Dean Boxall, remember the name.
There's a piece on slate.com. I love the little bandwagons that certain media organisations find, and there's a piece, Olympics Jerk Watch, the boisterous Australian swim coach who dry humped a wall. Headlines you did not expect to see after a couple of days of the 2020 Games, I think it's fair to say. So, Mona McSharry then, this morning, this was the main event, Shane. This is not necessarily something we expected to see during these games. An Irish swimmer in an Olympics final. She finished 8th in the 100 metre breaststroke. Just so strange to see an Irish swimmer in this company, the first time in our living memory that this has happened. And this is somebody who is a genuine superstar, who is already talking about Paris in 2024. And it was really telling in her post-swim interview on TV just how she had pointed out that Paris was going to be her chance to make a final. That was her target. But like, whatever her targets were for this Olympics, I'm not sure, but her target was to make a final in Paris 2024. And that's unbelievably exciting to hear, because she's made that target happen and she's achieved that goal 3 years early. So you're thinking to yourself, the sky's the limit for McSharry, because in terms of her swim last night, she was a little bit disappointed with a couple of elements here and there. It was still a good swim, but you could tell that if a couple of those elements that she'd mentioned had gone right, she could have got a 6th or 7th place finish. So she is within reaching distance of a top 5 in the Olympics, which is just incredible. And I guess it's been the real good story. We'll get to the Irish heartbreak in just a moment, but McSharry has been the real winner from an Irish perspective so far.
Yeah, and she's the poster girl for Irish swimming, and she's really put it on the map in recent years. Like, her name is so familiar to anyone who follows sport in this country. And I can just imagine people in Sligo getting up in the middle of the night last night to watch that, because I think she tweeted yesterday, here I am again asking the people of Ireland to get up in the middle of the night to watch me, and 3:15. Like, when you have someone in an Olympic final in swimming for the first time in 25 years, people don't mind getting up to watch that, because it's such a historic moment. But as you mentioned, like, she was second quickest off the blocks, and you're thinking to yourself, this could be a top 5 finish here. This is good. This is going to be excellent. And she's posted faster times, as like you mentioned, or maybe a little bit of disappointment. She has posted faster times in her career than she did last night, the 106.94. But that doesn't take away from what she's achieved here, because getting to an Olympic final in a discipline as competitive as the 100 metre breaststroke is quite extraordinary. And she did it with such poise and grace as well. Like, even in her interview after the semi-final. Like, she's so calm, cool, and collected. Like, I love these. There's a lot of Irish athletes at this games that are seriously impressing me with their composure, and like the likes of Reece McClenaghan, the cockiness and confidence, the calmness of Nat Nguyen the other day after winning his badminton match in the group stages, and yeah, Mona McSharry. I mean, she's just like, the fact that even Team Ireland are tweeting afterwards talking about the fact that, look, Paris, the countdown to Paris starts here. Like, 2024 is going to be her Olympic Games. That's going to heap the pressure on her, because we all know it's her Olympic Games, and after getting to an Olympic final, the only realistic next ambition is to get, top 5, probably a medal. So if anyone can do it, Mona McSharry can do it, because what a talent she is.
It is something that did cross my mind as well, like listening to that post-swim interview, and it is just this idea of how the goalpost will completely shift for her over these next 3 years, where you're right, she is a household name. She is the biggest name in Irish swimming, and she has been for a while, since she's been winning at underage level. But this just completely changes everything. As you say, people getting up in the middle of the night to watch her is now a name beyond Irish sport, I think it's fair to say, after the performances of the last couple of days. She's not done, by the way. There's still another opportunity for her to kind of go into 200 and actually go another step further in terms of furthering her own profile. But that pressure will be different, and you start to think, God, how will she manage to actually deal with that pressure over the next couple of years? But then you're kind of like, she's gone to the University of Tennessee. She's embedded herself in a culture there which has got the very best out of herself. She's competing against the best people around in the United States week after week after week. And that's sort of why she's got to this level. In a way, she will be insulated a little bit from that pressure, given she will be in the United States. She won't be asked about the Olympics all the time, because she'll have to work bloody hard to make her own swim team. Like, this is a genuine, brilliant scenario for her to be in over these next couple of years, where I actually think that the pressure won't really be a factor going into Paris. She'll have her own expectation, and she'll have her own self-made pressure, but there won't be this sort of Irish magnifying glass placed upon her all the time.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The fact that she is in Tennessee and avoiding the Irish obsession with sport and obsession with winning
with medals
can only be a good thing.
How many medals are we going to win? Who is going to? And especially in swimming, when it's like, we have one person who can do it. It all becomes magnified on that one person, and like it is just going to be such a comfort for her. Like, I mean, it's been quite a few years, we should say, for Mona McSharry. I mean, getting to an Olympic final after winning Ireland's Fittest Family is quite. I'm not quite sure which one she would actually see as the bigger achievement, but
true.
It's been quite a few years.
She's something, like, the fact that she's only 20 years of age as well. Like, she was born in 2000. Do you know that? If that doesn't make you feel old, I don't know what will, because it just kind of highlights what she has achieved at such a young age. And the fact that, I think, Paris, it's a shorter than usual turnaround to the next Olympics. She's only got 3 years, which makes it a little bit easier, I think, because 4 years sounds like an awful long time to prepare for an Olympic Games, and that Olympic gap period must be tough on a lot of athletes, because they must question themselves if they put everything in for 3 or 4 years and then have a Paralympics, to go and do it again must be so tough. But the fact that Mona McSharry has made an Olympic final, that will give her the kick that she needs to really focus over the next 3 years. And, she's going to be 23 at the next Olympic Games. She's going to be more mature, a better swimmer, you would imagine. And as she said after the final last night, to have 3 swims under 107 in that discipline is really, really good. I mean, she said if you told me I would have swam 106 beforehand, I would have been really happy. It shows a consistency in training. Now, we watch different events. Like, I was watching the badminton yesterday and watching different events, and we turn into experts. We think we are experts automatically by watching 1 hour of a. It's like, oh, that was a really good shot in badminton. You're like, not a clue. It was the first badminton match you'll have ever watched. We all turn into the couch experts. Even the triathlon, I was thinking, yeah, this is a really good run from Caroline Hayes. Really excellent. Like, she's really, really good. Like, you just start. It's bluffing. It's a bluff job. We all, like, sitting there watching Serbia and Canada, the women's basketball, like I'd watched loads of Serbia and Canada. Like, they're, like, of course, knew they were the European champions and could name all of their players, Eoin, but only after watching them for 10 minutes last night. But, like, that consistency. The consistency in swimming, and especially in that discipline, as Mona McSharry said, is key. And if she would have taken 3 swims under 107 in that discipline beforehand. So that really is a promising sign for Mona McSharry. And look, roll on Paris 2024.
Yeah, I think we can, as much as we are absolute experts at all of these sports, Shane, I do think that when it comes to hearing from the horse's mouth, I think Mona McSharry maybe knows a thing or two more about her own performances than we do. So I trust her appraisal of her performance. But you know what, I'm sure we agreed with it before she even said anything. Just to bring you up to speed on a couple of other things that have been happening over the last little while. The sailing has been disrupted. Sean Weidelove and Robert Dixon were due to go into 49ers. That was supposed to be race 1 this morning. That's been delayed due to the weather. Annalise Murphy did get home though, and she's had quite a good day actually. She's up to 20th place overall. She had race 5 and race 6 today. She came 9th in race 5, 10th in race 6, so she's up to 20th, as I say, after a very, very hard couple of days. Annalise is back and puts herself still a very outside shot of a medal, but still there and still plugging away, and her best couple of races so far during these games. The rugby sevens, I just want to mention this if you've woken up and you want another bit of your daily dose of heartbreak, go and watch the rugby sevens highlights. Go and watch the full match back if you want. They conceded a try with 40 seconds to go, and that is them out of the contention for the medals. They were in the quarterfinals. They needed an 8-point margin of victory, and they were leading 12-0. And with 40 seconds to go against Kenya, they conceded a try, really poor try to concede, and you could see at that moment they knew that this thing was crumbling around them. It's like, I mean, Shane, like between Jack Woolley, Liam Jagu, Michaela Walsh and Emma Brennan in the boxing, and now the Irish Rugby Sevens team, there has been enough Irish heartbreak to last for the entire games. Like before the Olympics, people were talking about this being the biggest Irish team ever with 116 athletes, and I was like, great, brilliant, more opportunities to win. But I forgot about the fact that more Irish athletes means more opportunities for pain.
Oh, sheer utter pain, Eoin, as well. It's not like a gentle pain. It's like a rip your plaster off really fast kind of pain, and it's like the look on Liam Jagu's face really hit home when he had missed out on his dream. And Jack Woolley as well, like he's been off the ball in the last year or so, and the confidence he had going into that Taekwondo event, he was expecting a medal. There's no question about it. And the tears in the post-fight interview just hit home, because you knew this was a young guy who completely had not hit his target or his ambitions for this Tokyo Games. And look, maybe some people can utilise the pain they feel during an Olympic Games and I guess use it for the better and use it to improve, but it doesn't make it any easier. I mean, we all know about heartbreak. We all have our own instances of sporting heartbreak, and I remember, Eoin, you were there for mine. We sat in a pub together in Clonus just before heading up to watch Monaghan versus Kerry in the Super 8s a couple of years ago in Clonus, and I was I think Monaghan, it was 3 points Monaghan's lead. They played really well. I was picking out the gate in which I was going to invade the pitch. I had told my father beside me, there is the gate that I'm going to run onto the pitch for and celebrate with these Monaghan players, because what an achievement, getting to the first All-Ireland semi-final in 30 years. Luckily we did it the following week in Salthill and Galway, and I wouldn't change a thing. But when David Clifford put that ball past Rory Beggan, a part of me died inside, Eoin. And that heartbreak just has lived with me ever since. Dampened surely by what happened in Salthill, as I said, but it like Irish people love sporting heartbreak. We say we hate it, but we talk about it. We wanted to be put into the World Cup as a 33rd team after Thierry Henry's handball. We milked this stuff up. Sonia O'Sullivan, 1996 in Atlanta, when she finished last, was gut-wrenching. We've had some moments of horror in football as well. Macedonia and Belgium come to mind. Gordon Hamilton's name, the Australian in, I think, 91 maybe, still gives nightmares to Irish rugby fans. Like, we can talk about heartbreak, but the Irish Sevens team have gone through their fair share of it. And to see that happen in the Kenya game, because they were so on top and they should have had another try in that game probably. And even after Kenya scored the try, Ireland kind of came up the wing, and you're thinking they're going to get another chance here, and the ball goes into touch, and your heart sinks for these boys, because they've put it all in. And now they have to kind of lift themselves up and try and win this little mini tournament to finish 9th. But that's going to be fairly difficult to do, because that was a gut-wrenching win against a team they should have had 7 points to spare over. But no, to miss out by that narrow a margin is just gut-wrenching.
I did want to finish up here then by chatting about Aidan Walsh. Just to finish up on a little bit more of a positive note, he had an easy win against his Cameroonian opponent earlier this morning. I'm sure a lot of you will have been up watching it. Like, it was glorious stuff, really. I mean, the Cameroonian came out, he got 2 different warnings throughout the fight, maybe quite eager in terms of maybe trying to score a knockout late on in the fight, but it was Walsh's composure probably differing from what we were hearing from the stands. Michaela Walsh cheering him on vociferously. You could hear her throughout the fight. It was brilliant to hear. And Sean McGoldrick was pointing out on Twitter that 15 minutes later, after that, the number 4 seed who Walsh was due to meet in medal fight gets beaten. So he now faces a Mauritius fighter on Friday with the winner guaranteed a bronze medal. That's Aidan Walsh. So all of a sudden, Shane, the boxing has gone from, I would say, in a negative place before this morning to back to being even, because that Aidan Walsh story is a good one. There is a live medal hope there in the men's division. And I think maybe before the games, I think possibly Ireland's 2 greatest medal hopes are going to be in women's boxing, and obviously with Michaela Walsh being one of those getting knocked out, you thought, God, this could be maybe Kelly Harrington carrying the entire hopes of the nation medals wise. But Aidan Walsh here with a decent opportunity now.
Yeah, and like to arrest that run, as you said, like boxing is the sport that we all expect medals from. Like it's probably the only sport that we expect to win medals from at every single Olympic Games, given our talent pool here. And like Aidan Walsh, we had 3 successive defeats in the ring at this Games, and that was kind of starting to set a bit of a negative tone towards the Irish boxing camp at this Games, and for him to win in a unanimous way. And to do it the way he did, because that's an awkward opponent, this Cameroonian Mengaisi. He started off fairly well. He was quite busy in the first couple of rounds, or first couple of minutes anyway, but wasn't scoring much at the same time, so giving Aidan Walsh opportunities. And then, like, he finished, I think, the first round fairly strongly, a few quick combinations in the last 30 seconds that would have left the mark in the judges' minds. And then, like, the right hook before the bell at the end just kind of summed up the fight, and deservedly a unanimous win. But as you mentioned, like to have this opportunity to fight a Mauritius fighter, not the fighter he expected to be fighting on Monday for a medal, like, I don't know how these fighters, when it gets to that medal fight, are able to park the emotion, because so much rides on that. Like, it's the difference between coming home to Dublin Airport with a bronze medal at the very least in your pocket, or nothing. So this fight, like, these guys all have no doubt sports psychologists with them in the Team Ireland camp and that sort of thing, and they're able to put all of that out of their minds and just focus on the fight at hand and what kind of a fighter they're coming up against. But Aidan Walsh, like, it's such a big fight on Monday, and if the country were up to watch Mona McSherry last night, we're all going to be watching Aidan Walsh on Monday fighting for a medal, because but we only had 2 medals in Rio 2016. There was hopes maybe for this Olympic Games that we'd maybe get, some people talking about 5 or 6 seems to be the number that I'm hearing most often. But if Aidan Walsh can get what would be, as you said, like, we're fancied in the women's boxing to get a couple, but an unexpected medal perhaps for Aidan Walsh, probably because of the caliber opponent he would have been facing, that number 4 seed, would have been excellent. But as you mentioned, Sean McGoldrick's tweet, like, this Mauritius fighter, while he is obviously a talented fighter to get to that stage, it's a 50-50 fight. He could win this, Aidan Walsh, and he could really come home with a medal. So it's just put things in perspective. And anything can happen at the Olympic Games. Like, I'm just watching the last hour, Naomi Osaka, the poster girl for the Olympics for Japan, knocked out by Marketa Vondrousova in the 3rd round, won 25 of her last 26 matches on the hard court. And she's out, her face, no doubt. I'm not over in Tokyo, obviously, but I'm sure her face is on posters everywhere and billboards across the city and across the country. And for her to be knocked out just shows anything can happen. And Aidan Walsh will take that attitude into Monday. Yeah,
the Irish boxers have been screwed over with an awful draw in many departments. So a little bit of a rub of the green really is the least they deserved after the last couple of days. Right, at 7:54 on this Tuesday morning, you're with us here on OTB AM, which is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Let's tell you what's coming up this morning over the next little while. Power rankings, it says, at 10 to 8. There is no update to the power rankings today. We'll casually talk about who may have moved up to the number 1 spot, who may have left the number 1 spot, but it's no big deal. We're not going to make too much of a big deal about that this morning. The sports page is coming your way at 8 o'clock this morning, and then Kevin Walsh will do a bit of a deep dive on Galway Mayo with us at 8:10, the former Galway coach, of course. Olympics coming your way at 8:35. Will O'Callaghan will be with us to bring us the latest on everything that's happening in Tokyo at the moment. And then Frances Cryan will be with us at 8:45. She was Ireland's first female rower to ever compete in the Olympic Games. So keen to get her thoughts on Sunita Puspur, keen to get her thoughts on Fintan and Paula Donovan, of course, who go tomorrow morning in their double sculls, weather permitting, obviously. 9 o'clock then, sports news with Phil Egan. We'll be chatting a bit about Raphael Varane with him as well. And then an interview with Michael Holding, which we did just a short time ago. Myself and Ger in conversation with him is coming your way at 9:10 before Monday Night Rugby plays us out at 9:30 this morning, with plenty of reaction to Reply Guy Razzie, as I like to call him, taken to Twitter yet again in the aftermath of the first test win for the British and Irish Lions. Right, it is time for the power rankings, and the power rankings usually involve Ger sitting here in studio trolling me. That's what the entire method is of these, so I hope you've got your ammunition ready, Shane. And
don't you worry, I can do that from here.
There seems to be, I don't know, I've kind of always made this point that Peter Keane and the Kerry team in general just have a spot in Nathan Murphy's head, and he has an absolute obsession with the team. He clearly deeply loves the team and deeply wants them to do well, that they just occupy every single inch of his brain when he comes on air in the aftermath of any big football weekend. And I don't know, there's people here on the part of the show who are making a big deal about the power rankings, who are making a big deal about the fact that, I don't know, Kerry should be number one, and they want some sort of cathartic moment where I come out and like rip off my shirt and there's a Kerry jersey underneath it, and I'm here talking them up and saying they're definitely going to win the All-Ireland because they think and they know that there is an opportunity for them to be beaten at some point later on this year, and they'll get great pleasure from that as the summer rages on. So what I will do is I will go halfway, Shane, and I will say to you this morning that if there were to have been an official power rankings this morning, Kerry will be number one. However, there's a reason why we're not doing an official power ranking, is because there are certain provincial finals that haven't been wrapped up yet. There is a certain team that have won 6 of the last 6 All-Ireland football finals playing this week, and they could yet reclaim top spot. So I'll say to you that Kerry are keeping the seat warm at number one, and the ball is in your court now, Dublin. Give us a 16-point plus win against Kildare. Very similar opposition to Cork, very similar standard opposition to Cork. You're also at home. You're at home against Kildare. Kerry were at home against Cork. So the same advantages, the same difference between you and your opponent should exist. And you should be at least kind of honouring Kerry's massive win at the weekend by a massive win of your own, Dublin. And if they don't do that, then Kerry will be doing more than just keeping the seat warm. They will be the concrete number one pick this time next week. Is this
the rip off the chest? Is that the rip off the chest that Nathan Murphy wanted? I wonder. Is that?
I'm sure it is
definitive enough. Like you're saying, keep the seat warm. You're saying this is the unofficial power rankings, but you've just said it. I mean, they're currently number one in your rankings. You can call this official, unofficial, whatever you want to call it. But the biggest win in the Munster final, that performance, and considering David Clifford wasn't even on form, his usual form, what we can expect of him. And a David Clifford with people doubting him now going into an All-Ireland semi-final against the Ulster champions. And by the way, that whoever that comes out of Ulster, it's going to be a different test to Cork. People in Kerry will know that. But at the same time, that was just a dominant Kerry performance. That was them putting their foot on Cork's neck and going for the jugular and just saying, nope, last year was a fluke. That's never going to happen again. The next 10 years are ours in Munster. We're going to dominate you. And you have absolutely no say in it. And Cork have pumped serious money into their GAA setups. And they're doing a lot of good things at underage. And that's gonna come to fruition in the next couple of years. But that Kerry performance at the weekend was their way of saying, nope, not a chance. This is not going to happen. And look, Dublin haven't been overly impressive, but they're still in the Leinster final. They're going to probably win that Leinster final on Sunday. Like they weren't great against Wexford, and I say that tongue in cheek because I know they still won comfortably. But the performance that we're used to from these dubs, and you have to take things into account as well, like the number of players that have left the Dublin panel, the fact that Stephen Cluxton, their quarterback, essentially isn't in there. All of these things have to be taken into account in the power rankings. Like sometimes logic doesn't come into the power rankings. Like
sorry, what?
Monaghan keeping their. Well, this is it. Like Monaghan kept their place in Division for an 8th successive year, might I add. A county of 60,000 people. only Dublin and Kerry have been in Division 1 longer than us. And we beat a team in Galway who are much bigger than us, Eoin, and not that I have a small man syndrome here or anything, but we like to get results like that, and we like to be doubted going into a game against Armagh, and then beat them. And granted, it was a 50-50 game, but Monaghan came out on top in the end when all was up against them, 2 points down, having led for so long, to come out and kick the last 4 points of the game and show the nerve that they did. And then they wake up on the Monday morning and see that they're I can't remember where we were in Eoin Sheahan's power rankings. I think it was 6th maybe, but we were certainly behind Donegal, which was hilarious to me because we had drawn with Donegal earlier in the league, and should have won that game as well. Conor McCarthy ran riot with a hat-trick of goals, let Donegal back into the game. Okay, a draw. We'll take a draw up in Ballyshannon. Not an easy place to get a result. But the power rankings kind of make a laughing stock out of it. But no, I'm happy for Monaghan to sit there, and I'm happy for them to still sit there after they beat Tyrone in the Ulster final at the weekend, because it's the newspaper up in the dressing room wall. It's John O'Mahony's fancy dance. That's what this is. Now I'm not going to make this all about Monaghan because Nathan Murphy, of course, you mentioned him, probably indirectly making it all about Mayo by talking about you because. And I don't even understand why, because the reality is the Connacht champions this year play the Leinster champions in All-Ireland semi-final. So Mayo won't have to worry about Kerry this year. It's going to be a Mayo-Dublin All-Ireland semi-final, and Dublin are going to win that match. So I can't see a Mayo-Kerry game happening. Now, if Cillian O'Connor can make a miraculous recovery from injury, I'll give them every chance going into a game against Dublin. And they were excellent in the Connacht final at the weekend, it has to be said. But I still don't... I think... Yeah, Kerry are living in Nathan Murphy's head rent-free, for sure. But there's no need for it because I don't think that matchup's going to happen this year. So the power rankings, just making people angry since, 2020, whenever this thing was invented.
You must be particularly angry because it seems that Monaghan have been written off in two respects. The first respect is that everybody's saying Kerry-Dublin will be a great All-Ireland final, suggesting that Kerry are going to come through their side of the draw. But people who are making a caveat tend to be saying, if Kerry beat Tyrone. So on both counts, Monaghan are being completely screwed over. You would think that there is only one provincial final left to play. I've heard people say Dublin or Kildare more than I've heard people say Tyrone or Monaghan. Why is this happening, Shane, and how angry are you as a result of that?
I'm very calm, very composed, Owen. I mean, I sat in this watching this show last week. Aisling O'Reilly was on with yourselves on OTB AM, and you were all talking about Tyrone being All-Ireland contenders. Talking about Darren McCurry, rightly so. What a player and what an Ulster Championship he's had so far. He's just an incredible talent. Cathal McShane as well. Conor McKenna coming back into this team. No doubt about it. Tyrone are a serious outfit and a tough team to beat. But to call them All-Ireland contenders when they have an Ulster final against a Monaghan team that has a bug to bear with this Tyrone team. That there's a different vibe going into this game. Like ordinarily, Monaghan playing Tyrone in Croke Park, there is that bogey team attitude in Monaghan. You've got the feel heading into it, the week heading into it, of not Tyrone again. I can tell you in Monaghan that this week there is no such feeling. There is just a feeling of looking forward to this game. If Darren McCurry, Cal McShane, all these Tyrone forwards that are so excellent, they have to come up against talented man markers, and that Monaghan full back line, Kieran Duffy, Conor Boyle, Ryan Wiley, all excellent man markers. Whoever they pick up is going to have a tough day. There's no doubt about it. And I'm trying to make the case for Monaghan here, knowing that Tyrone are going to be slight favourites heading into this game, unquestionably. But Kieran Duffy is the stickiest man marker in the country. I mean, the Latin man, if he was marking you in a club game, you'd probably walk off. There's no point. What's the point in even playing? Because he can keep the best forward in the country scoreless from play. And the Monaghan team, if they can have a field day up front, if Jack McCarron, Conor McCarthy, Conor McManus can all have their shooting boots on in a similar vein that they did against Armagh, this could be a really, really good Ulster final. I'm hoping for a bit of decent weather, the big Croke Park pitch. It's going to be a cracker of an Ulster final. And look, either team could win this. It's a 50-50 match, as was the Armagh semi-final against Monaghan. But make no doubt about it, Tyrone have their hands full if they're going to win Ulster. And if they do win Ulster on Saturday, they'll have earned it.
What do you make of the game being played in Croke Park?
see, there's a lot of Monaghan GAA bones to bear over the last few days on forums and on Twitter and that sort of thing, because it's quite difficult to get tickets for this match, given the limit of 18,000 people, and especially now that it's a triple header on Saturday in Croke Park. So you've got the Nicky Rackard Cup final between Tyrone and Mayo at 1:30. Then you've got at 4:00 Monaghan and Tyrone in the Ulster Senior Football final, and after that then at 6:30 Fermanagh versus Cavan in the Lory Maher Cup final in the hurling. So going to be a strange day. Now, there's pods of 5 as well for tickets. I've seen a lot of people giving out about, and I saw one person posting online as well that if you have an Ulster final in Clonus, 2 adults and 3 kids tickets, which is a fairly common order, €65 that would cost you. In Croke Park, the same seems to be costing €165. Now, that's what one person said online. I don't really understand the GAA's logic in moving this match to Croke Park. I know it was the same for the Connacht final, and you cannot take away from the fact that the Connacht Council and the Ulster Council asked for this, because they need the money as well. They've had a tough year, and they probably want to sell the extra tickets. That's all well and good, and they say they want more fans to get in there. But the fact that then it's turned into a triple header for Monaghan, and there's less tickets available for both Monaghan and Cavan and Tyrone. Sorry, that's kind of hard to grasp. And don't get me wrong, Croke Park it'll be an excellent event on Saturday. It'll be an excellent event on Sunday as well in the Leinster final, the true home of the Leinster final at least. But it's just a strange feeling. I mean, the Connacht final had a weird feel to it. You get so used to seeing the Connacht trophy being lifted up in Dr. Hyde Park or in Castlebar or in Pearse Stadium or even in Tuam. It just didn't have the same feel. And Clonus and the Ulster final go hand in hand. Clonus is the home of Ulster football. Walking up that hill in the sun on an Ulster final day, there's no feeling like it. And it truly is, where the Ulster final belongs. And I just hope it's not a long-term thing. I hope it is only a COVID decision that they wanted to move it away just for this year. Even listening to Peter Canavan the other day, he said his choice would be to have a bigger crowd in Clonus or Castlebar. Surely you could get still 10 or 12,000 in at least, even with COVID guidelines. And you could argue that people travelling from Castlebar, staying overnight, and the rest of it are more likely to spread COVID-19 than if it was just left in Connacht or even left in Clonus. I don't know. I'm not an epidemiologist. I don't know what the answer to that is. But either way, Tyrone will be glad to play in Croke Park. They'll be glad not to have to go to Clonus and play in Monaghan, even though they're very used to that pitch. But it's a strange one. Mayo are fine because they've played in Croke Park so often compared to Galway. But I just hope it's not a long-term thing. Like Croke Park,
I know it won't be. Show. It's a reaction to COVID, and I think it's the seats. You need a full stadium with seats, and to be able to put the 18,000 or whatever. I'm sure it'll be back to Clonus again next year. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. It is 8:08 on this Tuesday morning. A packed show still to come right here on OTB AM. We'll hear from Kevin Walsh shortly, and we'll have the back pages up next after this quick break.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Automower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
We all talk about what might happen and our hopes and dreams for the day, but that's not real life.
Dadcast Tuesdays from 3 p.m. on OTB Sports Radio. Tune in on the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
You're welcome back. Now, former Galway manager Kevin Walsh is with us for a bit of a considered take on the weekend's football. He's also the man behind growcoach.ie, an online coaching platform for GAA coaches and players at all levels. Kevin, how are you getting on?
Morning, guys. How are you doing?
Good. Now, Grow Coach, talk to us about this.
I suppose it's a kind of a coaching platform that maybe looks a bit deeper into, because the skills that mightn't be that much seen. So when you have your review of the brilliant goal or the brilliant pint or the brilliant bit of defence, sometimes we can overlook the parts that probably cause this. So we're just looking a bit deeper into things that can give teams a better chance of winning and individuals a better chance of improving.
So rather than just focusing on the big incidences or the big moments in a game, it's more looking for underlying trends.
Yeah, our underlying, we'll say, for instance, even missed tackles or rushing in or slipping, like there's a skill to actually stopping. And we all say, well, hard luck on that tackle. And once the missed tackle comes, the whole pitch opens up. So can we stop that kind of stuff by getting our footwork right? Same as in attack, can we get the runners coming in the right areas rather than running everywhere and wasting energy? So it's just little bits and pieces like that. Like, I'm sure when the missed tackle happens, we all talk about the great point or great score or great move. We don't maybe go deep enough to say what causes it.
How high is a missed tackle count on average in a championship game, say for instance on Sunday?
Look, it's quite high, but it's we have to be careful. Like a lot of teams will go out to count tackles to show how intense the team is. Other teams won't, and I suppose if we go counting missed tackles, your team might be sending off too much. So it's to find that balance where someone can stop in the right area. So, like, even if you look at Paul Conroy's second point on Sunday there in 7 minutes, you see where Egan rushes over and completely misses him, lunges him, and at least leaves him in a simple tap over with the left foot. Where if that was what do we call a close out from Grow Coach, that you can stop in an area where he stops the passing lanes and also stop the shooting lane, and also maybe just turn the guy backwards while waiting for help.
So what would you be telling Aidan O'Shea then in your Monday morning review?
To be fair to Aidan O'Shea, I've just picked that instance out, so I don't want to say that Aidan's doing this all the time. He's not. But again, if you look at that, it's where Galway scored 2-8. That's one of the points. So that's 1/8 of the points by a simple incident like that. So it's just important that like, in particular when the game is gone, with all the bodies coming at you, if you can hold up the play for 2 to 3 seconds, it just gives you your head defence beside you.
There's a couple of themes you wanted to touch on from that Connacht final on Sunday, Kevin. The first thing is the role of the sweeper. What are you looking for here when you're judging the effectiveness of a sweeper in a game?
Look at it, you're judging what area you're marking and what skills they've got in that area. So, like, you can go back at the Mon and Armagh match, and you'll see towards the end where Armagh got a vital goal, and you'll see Hughes doing a sweeper there, where he's in the right area, but he just leaps off the ground and there's a man around him. So it's the footwork that's required in that area in the end of the situation. So, for instance, even on Sunday, you'll see where we've got bodies back, but I'm not for sure if you have a defined role. So if you look at, we say, when the ball is more than one kick away, that's the language we use, the ball can only potentially land in space in front. So I would ask the sweeper to mark space at that point. But when it comes within one kick away of the full forward, that sweeper's been moving straight back to double team. In particular, the likes of Aidan O'Shea, who would be a very, very strong full forward, and that's where the penalty came from. You'll see that Aidan O'Shea was actually low, and the sweeper was in no man's land. It was popped off the top. Aidan O'Shea won it, and the runners came off the shoulder. So it's just the understanding of the tools you must give to a sweeper, and not have too many sweepers at the same time.
So one kick away, I presume you're talking. Are you talking inside your own half? Is that what you're judging?
Yeah, I'm talking about where a ball can potentially land. So we all know the ball is not going to go 80 yards. The chance it might go 60.
Yeah.
So you mark the space in front where the ball can potentially land.
So you want to see your sweeper basically drop back in front of the full forward when the ball is in and around the 45 metre line. Is that, would you go that far, Kevin? Is it that black and white?
Exactly. And again, in particular, it's depending on the guy that's at full forward. So if you have a really speedster in full forward and the ball is only 45 metres away, you can afford to mark him slightly in front, taking his space he wants to run into, because the high ball is not going to kill you. Well, but to use the likes of Aidan O'Shea, who is very strong, who will normally beat his eye 1v1, your sweeper needs to be sitting back there. The minute he catches that ball, he's got to be on top.
Who would be the standout sweepers at the moment, Kevin, in the country? Because Cian O'Sullivan was obviously that guy for so long.
Cian O'Sullivan was really, really good. If you look at Liam Silk, Johnny Heaney for ourselves in our time would have been strong at it. I suppose the biggest thing we've got to be careful with is and that we don't just go with one sweeper all the time. I think that the Go Kart side of it, we would always try and have an alternating slipper, because sometimes the team will push a guy up on a slipper, and you're inviting the team. Whereas you have 2 or 3 different people at different times, it's very hard for the team to figure that out.
Kevin, curious as well, just to listen to Porritt Joyce's comments after the match, talking about how Galway's shooting in Croke Park, your shooting in Croke Park needs to be better than it was at the weekend. Is that something that kind of strikes home in the stats as well? I know Mayo have played, I think someone said in Croke Park 37 times in the last 10 years. Galway have only played there 10 times in the last 10 years. Are the shooting stats kind of stranger in Croke Park in your mind as a coach? People often talk about the backdrop and how maybe the goal seems a little bit closer than it is. Is there something in that maybe some teams are more used to a pitch like Croke Park than other teams?
Yeah, I definitely think there is. I have it in my book as well. I've a team that plays on a home venue more regular has a start on another team. There's no doubt about that. And in particular Croke Park, because it's like a Coliseum compared to other stadiums. You go to Killarney, you go to their stadium, you go up to Down. It hasn't got that big hill. It hasn't got where the goalpost gets lost in there. So the Croke Park is a massive issue. And the Dubs are there quite a bit. The Mayo team in the past would have been there quite a bit. But to be fair to this new Mayo team, they're not used to it either. So that would be very, very good for them going forward, because a lot of those Mayo guys needed a chance to play in Croke Park.
Would you like to see the likes of Dublin come out of Croke Park a little bit more often? I know we had the Donegal bringing it up a couple of years ago that even in the Super 8s, Dublin should have the game or two outside of Croke Park. Are you along similar lines, or do you think, if you're going to beat them, you're going to have to beat them in Croke Park anyway?
Well, it looks like you're going to have to beat them in Croke Park anyway, and I've no problem with that on a final day because of the tradition of GAA. But I don't see any reason why Dublin aren't out of Croke Park for every single game by the final. They played Meath last week. If that was a Navan, would we have a different result? Maybe we would. Was there huge crowds in it that they needed to be in Croke Park? I don't think so. And again, as I said, I've stated in the book as well, if you look at the odds that the actuaries put up, and there's different odds for being home and away, in particular in Croke Park, and there's a reason for that. And that means that there's certainly some kind of an advantage to a team who's used to playing in the pitch like that.
Can I just ask you as well, you mentioned the book, I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, you talking in the book about it being not necessarily a 70-minute game, but more like a 78, 79-minute game, and even in club a 68, 69-minute game that often players and managers don't take into account in their preparations or in their mindset or psychology. The fact that this isn't, that injury time and added time is quite significant in GAA nowadays. And when you look at different times as well in the game, like that third quarter, for example, on Sunday when Mayo outscored Galway by 1-4 to no points, do you think some teams are maybe accused of sometimes forgetting about a period in the game, or kind of slacking off for a period in the game when, as you say in the book, you need to be on form for every single minute, and not just for 70, but for 78, 79?
Yeah, and look at it. 79-1 in the book is, I suppose it's really driving home the fact that a player is only on the ball for a maximum of 1 minute. And when you break it down, and he's done well. So what's your impact for the 79 minutes? And there has to be concentration levels. It has to be using your body. It has to be the stuff like the sweeper I'm talking about. And if you can get everybody in that frame of mind and holding concentration, you're in a great place. We use a phrase, run 5 to say 50. And that really means run the first 5 yards early. You may save yourself a 50-yard run. And, the amount of stuff that you're stopping happening is crucial. Even if you look at the ball off the post, the last day, you had 4 Mayo guys standing up. Shane Walsh happened to be jogging in, and he was the first to see it reacted and back of the net. That goal could potentially put you out of the championship. So the concentration levels there, the run 5 to say 50 was very low. So I'm sure Mayo learned from that. But the 79-1 really means, how can I impact the game when I'm off the ball?
That phrase there, run 5 to say 50, is an interesting one. It's a great outcome if you can make it happen, Kevin, but I presume teaching that skill to be able to recognise what those 5 yards are or when to run those 5 yards is an extremely hard thing to coach into somebody.
It is to a degree, but I suppose that run 5 to say 50 is actually concentration, right, as much as anything else. Of course, the other side of it is knowing where to be takes a skill.
Yeah.
But you can still help and coach that to a degree. But some people will always be better at it. But like if the concentration levels are high, and it's the language you use. If you can say to players, "You'll run the first 5, you're going to save yourself and your teammates a 50-yard run over the field." Now that will bring your GPS down, but doesn't mean that you're not playing any worse. And that's why I don't really go by the GPS figures too often, because some teams can be running headless after they make massive mistakes.
Are teams very obsessed with their GPS stats at the moment?
I think they can be. It's hard for me to say what exactly goes on inside management teams, but I know in the past years people were just obsessed with GPS numbers, and I suppose what we say in Grow Coach too is less is more at times. And all the information you have, if you take too much of it in, what do you go after? And what's the most important rock to move? So I suppose, I think you're right. GPS can be used a bit too much at times at the detriment of the team.
When you're looking around at this Galway team at the moment, are you confident that there is going to be a kick next year? Do you think that they're on the right path?
Look, this team, it's a very young team. An awful young players came through at the same time. You're looking at Paul Conroy, Shane Walsh, Damien Comer, all had huge impacts in the game, the last time, in particular in the first half, but seemed to go out in the second half. So, it depends on how many young leaders come through. And if you bring an awful gang of young fellas, if there's not leaders amongst them, we don't know that yet, and other leaders are gone, I suppose that question is yet to be answered. But there seems to be a lot of movement very quickly.
A lack of consistency in the squad and maybe too much turnover?
Well, there's a good bit of turnover. As I said to you, maybe next year will show us who can lead and can't lead. But there's a massive amount of new bodies, I suppose, to play to a system where if you're introducing 2 or 3 years' time, you there's a more, how would I say it to you, a more simpler turnover.
Sure. It's interesting, Kevin, sometimes you can, I'm not sure, maybe it's just from watching more games in Croke Park and maybe there's a possibility of getting a better seat, but it seems that patterns of play are more obvious in Croke Park than in most other grounds around the country, that you can see a well-coached team and you can see a not so well-coached team quite much more easily in Croke Park than other places. So are you seeing a more advanced, maybe not a level of coaching, but maybe a more advanced tactical approach from Mayo at the moment compared to Galway? So if you leave all the talent aside for one moment, are they operating at a higher level when it comes to their coaching?
Well, if you look at Sunday, I suppose the 2 things that sticks out for me, and we knowing that Mayo are a running team who love to run with numbers and always have been in that. In the Grow Coach thing, we deal with the 5 lanes in attack. We break the pitch down to 5 lanes. And, in attack, we should be all hitting the 5 lanes, full width of the pitch. But it's just in the defensive side of it, 3 lanes is actually enough to mark when the teams come at you. In particular, when it's a Mayo team that are runners and love to run through the middle. They really struggle down lane 1, lane 5, had done over the years. And it just, on Sunday's game, they got 2 for 2 goals. They missed 3 other goals. And their point shooting was all from inside from the arc. It wasn't that they were hitting shots from 55, 60 and stuff. So that for me would be something that, would certainly need to be fixed a bit more for a group of players. If you look at twice there, Duran's goal, Conroy's point, there's 5 goalie bodies around those 2 guys and they sold it through it. So is it a case of, like I spoke earlier about the one sweeper, having 4 or 5 bodies in an area, do they know their jobs? Is it that they think that someone beside them is going to take up the mantle and all of a sudden no one takes it up? We've got to be really careful with how many bodies you bring back, and when you're back that they have a role, a defined role. Because sometimes, you leave the job the guy beside you, or you won't move in time because your concentration level goes down. So I suppose that's just something that probably was. And the other thing was the kick out. I just felt the Galway were very easy to read. I didn't see a massive amount of different areas that could have kicked the ball. In particular, when Mayo always push up on a kick out. Different if your team lays off, you're going to get your short kick outs. So I think probably behaved poorly in the kick-out stakes in the second half, and that's probably something needs to improve as well.
It's just predictability, Kevin, is it? Is it just, it may almost seem that they knew what the goalkeeper was going to do and what the routine was going to be?
Yeah, to a degree. I suppose you're always going to analyse other teams and whatever they do the 2 or 3 games before is more than likely what they're going to be at. But I suppose it's not just about a goalkeeper, it's about all the outfield players having a role of where to move, where not to move, where to stand, the pocket you're trying to develop. Do you go in a line? Is there screening going on? All that type of stuff to make space. But I just didn't see that in the second half with Galway. It's something that, the lanes, number one, and the kick-out strategy is huge.
When you look at the overall picture then, Kevin, are you seeing a Mayo team coming through Connacht who are better placed to try and take on Dublin this year than they were at any point over the last 10 years, or are they still a few steps behind where they were at their peak?
I think they're still a few steps behind where they were at the peak. I just don't think they're going to replace Higgins, Barrett, Boyle, Keelan O'Connor, all those players straight away. I think these young fellas will take a little bit of time. I suppose the only thing I will say where they're definitely better placed is the fact I think Dublin have come back to pack. So, Dublin missing the likes of McCaffrey, Mannion, all the bodies that are kind of gone, McGawley, those guys. I'm not so sure Dublin have ever replaced all their lads. So, I just think the pack is getting tighter. Whether Mayo are up to that yet or not, I'm just not so sure. I know when the McLaughlins came on Sunday, they had a massive impact on that game. And, Kevin McLaughlin for me is probably one of Mayo's best players that doesn't get the credit. He does the simple stuff right. His tackling is brilliant. His visual awareness is brilliant. His passing is brilliant. He always kicks a point or two, and he's always in the right place. But when he wasn't on the pitch last day, and when they didn't have the other leaders, I thought Mayo struggled a bit when teams got stale. So I'm just not so sure where they're at in relation to Dublin a minute.
It strikes me, Kevin, when you're talking as well, like we're talking about stats and facts and GPSs and just how almost professional the GAA has become in the last number of years, the last couple of decades, or decade especially. And you see the number of TV cameras around Croke Park, and Porrick Joyce was referencing the Shane Walsh incident when he was dragged down by one of the Mayo players during that game at the weekend. And he had scored 1-1. He was really dangerous. Of course, he's always target man. And then had to get a pain-killing injection in his shoulder at half-time. And one of the cameras picked it up. And Porrick Joyce was talking afterwards and says, look, I'd seen it happen. There's 2 linesmen, there's 4 umpires, there's a referee, and there's an assistant referee. Like, as someone who is a former inter-county manager, does it surprise you that incidents like this, especially in a stadium like Croke Park, go seemingly relatively unnoticed?
I've made no secret of this in the book. I feel this very strongly. It's time, and past time, the GAA review referees. And if the referee isn't up to standard, move somebody else in there. Like, this cannot be a case of, this is my Sunday, the linesman, you have it next Sunday. There's people there with flags. All they do is wave to one another. They're referees. They're supposed to be high standard referees. For me, they should have the exact same power as the guy in the middle. And, we should have 5 or 6 referees on this if you have them around the pitch. Because it doesn't make sense. The same thing will happen with Shane Walsh in our own final 2019. But, the linesmen are taking a back seat here. But maybe they're told to that. But the GAA has to move on. And it's not just about fouling. It's about everything else. It could be a point that shouldn't be a point. It could be, there's loads of stuff. They have to have an impact. They cannot be just there to wave a flag. And that's what it seems to me. So I don't blame Porrick for the comments on that. But it's happening every day. It's not a once-off incident.
Like, another thing, like you spoke about in the book, was I guess the air around GAA punditry at the moment. And like, this is someone I spoke to different people around, even in soccer with the European Championships, the level of punditry. And there's quite a high level of punditry. You see the likes of Roy Keane and Alex Scott, really, really good pundits, and someone you turn up the TV for at half time. Like, generally speaking in the GAA, and I know you referenced GAA punditry in your book as well, do you think GAA punditry has improved? Has it receded a bit? Like, even the use of stats and the things we're talking about here this morning, there doesn't seem to be much of that in modern punditry in the GAA. Would you agree, or where do you sit on the current state of GAA punditry?
Yeah, look, I totally agree. I think that technology is massively improved, so that has moved on. But I mean, the same phrases are still there. It's kind of a phrase of the transition from defence to attack, and it's all the same phrases, but it's just nothing to back it up. And look, I would love to see the analysis being done deeply. The little bits I've been talking about earlier on, and even if you look at someone telling us, well, this team scored 898 in the league and conceded 448, whatever you want to say, what's actually causing that? Why is the team defensively better? Why is the team offensively better? Get into the nuts and bolts of what's doing it, so that people can understand the game where it's moved on to. So for me, it's there's two things here. Someone will tune in to watch the punditry because there'll be something funny said, or others might. They just probably, I know people have turned off television because they're not listening to a lot of it. So I think for the supporters and for everybody else that aren't inside the county dressing rooms, it'd be no harm if you had people that could bring out that type of knowledge out to the public, so that maybe they can look for a different part of the game and say, oh yeah, I see what's happening here. For instance, if I was to go back over the stuff we had done, there was a certain type of kick-out we had, and the more we lost that kick-out, the better return we got. And we know that over a period of time, where others might be saying, well, I've won 9 kick-outs out of 13. Well, actually, the fact that 4 I lost, if I'm set up right, I could get a bit out of them. So that's the kind of how deep it needs to go to if you really want to get the exchange.
All right, Kevin, good stuff. Growcoach.ie is where you can go to find out any more information about what Kevin was talking about there. Kevin, great stuff. Thanks many for taking the call.
Thank you, Mr.
Cheers. Kevin Walsh there, former Galway manager, and as I say, growcoach.ie, an online coaching platform for GAA coaches and players at all levels, is where you can go to get more information on all of that and explain around some of those concepts as well. Right, it is 8:32 a.m. and here on OTB Sports we're broadcasting every game from the British and Irish Lions tour South Africa, live and off the ball. Lions legend Brian O'Driscoll joined Neil Tracy on commentary for the first test on Saturday, and we'll be bringing you the second test live again this coming Saturday. Our Lions coverage is brought to you in association with Vodafone, lead partner of the British and Irish Lions. Now later on we'll bring you a chunk of Monday Night Rugby. Here's a taste of that chat. Gordon Darcy weighing in here on Razzie Erasmus's recent antics.
It's just a little bit unbecoming, and I think there's an expectation of coaches, directors of rugby, things like that. I would have thought almost like an unwritten rule that you don't engage in that, because effectively you're airing your dirty laundry that you weren't comfortable to do in a press conference. He's still the director of rugby for South Africa, so if he wants access to the media, it's quite easy for him to get access to the media. So I'm confused as to why he feels there's value in this. Clearly it is to take away attention from something else in the Eddie Jones kind of mode of things. Is there, don't look behind the curtain, look over here. So maybe that is going on. I liked Warren Gatlin's response to it, and I like coaches that I suppose follow that kind of that he's just kind of like, listen, you don't see me doing that, do you? Yeah. Because you expect Warren Gatlin to be reasonably private. I want my coach, director of rugby to be, a thought leader, somebody who's thinking, behind closed doors and lets the talking happen on the pitch, not kind of go and picking up little bits and pieces. Like Gatlin went and had a go in his press conference about what he felt, Faf de Kirk or whatever it was in the Springbok game. But it was aired, it was there, it was done, it was said. And then the director of rugby for South Africa, you couldn't make this up. It's like a Carry On movie or something. Goes on to Twitter and goes, oh, well, let's talk about this. And they're going, but this isn't talking about this. This is going into an artificial environment, and you're already giving people the answer you want to hear back. So It's not, again, as I said, it's not a fair representation. I think it actually takes away from the aura of Razzie Erasmus.
Yeah, Gordon Darcy there on Monday Night Rugby alongside Rory O'Connor in conversation with Joe. You can catch the full piece back on the OTB Sports app, and we'll be bringing it for you as well here live at 9:30 here this morning as well. Let's run you through some of the sports pages this morning, and we'll start with otbsports.com. Razzie Erasmus and the curious case of the Egg Twitter account. More on that story as the lads were just discussing. The rise of Mona McSharry, as told on the Olympic show yesterday, is up on our homepage as well. And Varane must have pushed through deal. Former Manchester United defender has been talking about the transfer. Wayne Rooney, meanwhile, as his tackle has ruled Jason Knight out of World Cup qualifiers. It is a desperate piece of luck. Another desperate piece of luck for Stephen Kenny. And Varane there, the news piece on him, set to sign a 4-year contract as United near deal with Real Madrid. Let's bring you through some of the newspapers then. The Guardian is where we start. Magic Monday is their headline. 3 glorious goals in Tokyo for Team GB. Overnight things got even better for them, especially in the swimming pool. Tom Dean storming to victory in the men's 200 metres freestyle, and Duncan Scott as well collected silver. So they had a 1-2 in that 200 metres freestyle just a short while before Mona McSharry took to the pool earlier. Not in time for the deadline though for these newspapers, and the Daily Telegraph goes with the headline Gold Rush with their new heroes from yesterday. The London Times getting all the UK papers out of the way first. Let's get this party started is their headline. 3 goals in 5 hours for Britain. Daly finally triumphs at 4th Olympics. Peaty and Pidcock outclass rivals. The Irish Times then leads with the Olympic Games, and Ian O'Riordan touching on that idea of hurt as we were talking about earlier on at 7:30. No dress rehearsal for the moment. An Olympic dream is crushed, going through chronicling some of the awful scenes really from an Irish athlete's perspective. Loads of heartbreak to go around over the course of the first few days. Johnny Waterson meanwhile writing about Mona McSharry. McSharry's achievement, a paradigm shift. Sligo women's success in reaching final, a huge fillip for the sport. The Irish Daily Mail goes with, and they're off at Ballybrit. That's their main photograph there from the Galway races. Meanwhile, Brendan will be on our minds. Ryan Wiley admitted last night the tragic death of Brendan O'Duffy is on every player's mind as they prepare for the Ulster final at the weekend. And Gatland poised to promote Vunipola for Lions Crunch second test. That's just a flavour of some of the papers. We'll get to the rest of them in just a moment. Will O'Callaghan, though, is with us this morning. Will, how are you getting on?
Morning, Shane. Morning, Owen. How are you getting on?
Yeah, good. You've been up all morning, I presume, keeping a close eye on events.
Yeah, alarm was set for 10 to 3 to get up and watch our first swimming medal event in some 25 years. Mona McSharry finishing up on in 8th place in the end in the 100 metres breaststroke final. She was happy enough with her performance. It was disappointing in terms of being her worst swim of the week. She'd gone faster both in the heats and the semi-final, clocking 1 minute 6.94 seconds. McSharry said afterwards anything under 1:07 was pretty good. I mean, there's just so much expectation on McSharry too. She's 20 years of age at this point. 3 years ago won the World Junior Championship in this event in the 100 metres breaststroke. Went on to win Ireland's fittest family along with her family a couple of years later, and she's been swimming away in her maiden Olympics. She said afterwards that effectively this is experience being banked up for 3 years' time, that she's really targeting a medal at the Paris Games of 2024. It was another youngster who won the gold medal. Bit of a surprise in the end, the American teenager Lydia Jacobi picking up the 100 metres gold medal in the breaststroke. And
an Alaskan swimmer, who would have thought it, and a very talented musician as well. There's been a lot of pieces doing the rounds this morning on that. There's been some amazing stories from the swimming pool over the last couple of days, and it just kind of feels weird, Will, to be in on the act right here, to actually have an Irish swimmer actually rubbing shoulders with some of these great stories, because it is the glamour event of the first week of the Olympic Games, and it's always something that we watch from a large distance and never have any horse in the race at all. But thankfully that's changed for once in our life.
Yeah, look, I think while people enjoy the quirkier events along the way, like realistically, swimming week 1, athletics week 2 is really where it's at in terms of, the blue ribbon competitions. And we've got plenty of swimmers still involved later today as well. Dara Green into his maiden Olympics. He goes in the heats of the men's 200 metres breaststroke. You've got Daniel Whiffen as well in the 800 metres freestyle. And then we've got the Irish relay team who'll be in action in the 4x200 metres. And the latest seems to be that Shane Ryan, despite the shoulder injury which he picked up, which meant he couldn't go on the backstroke on Monday, he will be able to take his place on the starting block later this morning, and the relay team will be in action in about 2 hours' time.
Good stuff. The conditions in Tokyo at the moment are they going to put the rest of the week in jeopardy, Will? Can we be confident in looking ahead to the Roars tomorrow morning and say that these events are definitely going to happen?
Well, it looks very testing. The 49er class in the sailing was delayed by about an hour and a half. It looked like a major typhoon during the triathlon last night. I'll admit that I went to sleep after the triathlon started to try and get 3 or 4 hours before getting back up to watch the swimming. Caroline Hayes from Limerick, again, another maiden finalist in the games, finishing up in 23rd position. But she said afterwards it was very testing, particularly with the swim, that the winds got very, very high. I think technically it was classed as a typhoon just before the triathlon was due to take place. That's not good news, for any sport that's on the water. The good news on the water, though, is that Annalise Murphy has given herself a bit of a chance on of qualifying for the medal race in the laser radial. She was the silver medalist back in 2016, then stepped away from the boat and came back for the Olympics. And she's kind of been a little bit disappointed with her form in the first of the 4 races, but did much better in race 5 and 6, inside the top 10 in both of them today. She's now up to 20th place. It's probably going to mean 2 more good finishes tomorrow if she's to get to the medal race. But where it looked like she had little or no chance beforehand, she's back in within a shout again. Just in terms of the triathlon as well, which I mentioned in terms of the weather, interesting story there too. Bermuda's first ever Olympics gold medalist has one of the most Irish names you will ever hear, Flora Duffy.
Yeah, we've absolutely claimed that one. We're saying that Shane Hannon couldn't find any Irish roots in Wikipedia, in his Wikipedia wormhole earlier.
I tried.
Have you also had a similar lack of success?
No, I'm going to have a look now and see if we can go back, but there has to be some kind of connection at some point if it's a Duffy. So yeah, I think we'll happily claim that breakthrough success. In the boxing as well, lads, we've now got a boxer within 1 fight of winning a medal. Very difficult draw for pretty much all of the Irish boxers, and all the expectation really is on Kelly Harrington. But Aidan Walsh is into the quarterfinals of the welterweight division. Watched a bit of this morning as well after the swimming. The Belfast fighter looked really assured. He beat Albert Menge from Cameroon, got the decision from all of the judges. So a perfect start for him. It was good to see his sister Michaela, who was knocked out of the competition yesterday, right there front row, supporting him today. So he'll be back in the ring against Mervyn Clare of Mauritius, who's the 4th seed in the quarterfinals on Friday. If Walsh was to pick up a victory there, he will be assured of at least a bronze medal. There was disappointment for the men's sevens rugby team, who are in action against Korea currently in the 9th to 12th place playoffs. They're 5-0 up in that game early on, but they had heartbreak and missing out in the place in the knockout stages, needing to win by 8 points. They conceded a last-minute try in their 12-7 win over Kenya in their final pool game. Harry McNulty and Hugo Lennox getting the tries. And there was even time left, lads, after Kenya got the try. They brought it back to 12-7, but very uncharacteristically, Ireland fluffed their passes just before the line and missed out on the chance to get into the last 8 in the competition, which I think, even though they were going in ranked as 12th into the tournament, a little bit disappointing that the door was open to know that just beating Kenya by 8 points would be enough to qualify for the medal series, and unfortunately they came up short.
It is, regardless of the pre-tournament rankings or how unfavoured they were with, this is dreadful to watch. It was like, in terms of how heartbreaking it was, one of these defeats, not a defeat, but one of these moments that occurs in slow motion, where you start to see them go into their shell just a little bit as the second half of rugby progressed, and you think to yourself, God, this is going to end with just a sting in the tail. And that's exactly what happened. And then I suppose the bottle was gone then, and we saw that error at the very end where they basically threw a pass out of play, and that was that.
Yeah, look, again, it's one of those things where they probably could have killed the game early on as well. They had so many chances, and then they got their 2 tries, and as you said, they seemed to kind of settle at that point to go, all right, a 12-0 victory is going to be enough to see us progress. We did the work possibly by running the USA close enough yesterday to go through on points difference, and they sat in the lead, and unfortunately were punished, because similarly Kenya knew that if they won, they had nothing to lose really once they were 12-0 down, so they decided to have a go. And that try proved to be very costly. They'll still want to finish up in 9th place. I mean, it's really pride at this stage more than anything else. And they've made a good start against Korea. That first half has just finished with Ireland 5-0 up, but they'd be very disappointed they didn't go into the last 8. Not as disappointed as Naomi Osaka, though. Like, the face of these games, crashing out early on in the tennis, beaten this morning in straight sets in round 3, which is a big surprise. You remember she lit the flame Friday lunchtime at the opening ceremony. Marketa Vonostrova beating her in straight sets. And Osaka, particularly with the players who aren't involved at the Olympics, was seemed as pretty much nailed on to win a medal. But unfortunately, that's not going to be the case.
What's the plan for today, Will? What's going to catch your eyeballs?
Look, for me, it's to have a nap later on, Owen, to be honest. About 3 hours sleep doesn't help when you've got a busy day. I will watch the swimming, though, because we've got 3 Irish teams out involved there in terms of Dara Green, Whiffen, and also the freestyle team. We're hopeful that some of them will progress in the heats. Like, we had some really good swims at the weekend on Saturday, like Ellen Walsh particularly won her heat, but unfortunately, the way things go, unlike many of the other sports where if you win your heat, you're guaranteed to go through to a semi-final, it's so time-based in the swimming that, you know, you get near personal bests and great swims, and it mightn't be enough for the Irish team to progress. But looking forward to that. I think if anyone gets a chance after they watch OTB AM, sit down, flick the telly on between about 10 and 12:30, and you can catch the Irish swimmers. And after that, I think I'll take a break and come back for day 5.
Good stuff, Will. Great stuff as ever. And I don't know how you guys do it, this whole business of staying up through the night and actually doing it. Go to sleep. Sleep like a normal person, Will. It is okay to watch things after they actually finish. Cheers for that, though, Will.
Thanks, lads.
Just one other thing to mention, one other piece of highlights you might want to catch later on. The heavyweight boxing is up and running, and earlier on there was a clash between David Nyika from New Zealand, he's one of the heavyweight boxers, and Yunus Bala of Morocco, I think it is. From Morocco. They were going toe-to-toe in a heavyweight bout, and Nyika won on a 5-0 scoreline. No trouble for him whatsoever. He was dominant over the opening couple of rounds. Gets into the third round, and his opponent was not having any more of this. He was absolutely hating life. So he went full Mike Tyson, and he attempted to take a chunk out of his opponent's ear using the only method known to man, which is your teeth. And I don't know. I mean, they went to the final. I'm watching a scene here where the fight is awarded to the opponent, so he didn't get fully disqualified there and then. But he did end up losing. But if you're going to go down biting, as they say. So that is the latest from the heavyweight boxing. The surfing also looks brilliant at the moment. This is going to be something to catch up on as the afternoon finishes up and after those swimming events are probably done. They obviously pushed that forward to lean into the storm because they wanted those stormy conditions on the beach in Japan. So they're kind of a couple of the scenes so far from the day. And as Will said, Ireland are beating South Korea 10-0 currently in their rugby sevens match, but obviously it is very much a consolation win if they manage to get over the line there after the disappointment of this morning. So we've got the OTB Sports Olympic show across all of our social channels as well. It's on at 5 o'clock every evening, and we are bringing you the biggest stories of the day, and also take a look ahead at what is to come. It's live in association with Indeed, who are proud to support Team Ireland at the Tokyo 2020 Games. Indeed believes the world works better when people are given every opportunity to unleash their true talents. #Talent Unleashed. Now here is Cathal Dennehy on the routine Mona McSharry had in Leaving Cert year, and it's not for the faint of heart.
It's a phenomenal story, and I think, you know, she is, I guess, the 1% of childhood swimmers who have made it to this level, who possibly had the talent and also had the work ethic, but you know, she's got that stroke of luck and she's got the support. Like, I remember talking to her, I think it was 4 years ago after she won that World Junior title, and sitting down with her and just kind of going over the year and going over her routine. And she was just going into her Leaving Cert year, and she was saying the alarm clock went at 4 a.m. every morning. She was out the door at 5 a.m. up to Ballyshannon, one of her parents doing the drive, and half-hour drive. She'd warm up for a half hour, 2 hours in the pool, back, breakfast, off to school, whatever it was, 8, half 8, and then back. All her friends would be going down to town after school. She'd be going back to the pool for another few hours, have dinner, and then she's doing homework for the night, and then bed at 10 o'clock at the latest. And that was the routine, 5 days a week. Saturday morning, it was one session. I remember saying to her, like, you know, at weekends, you obviously have the weekends off. Do you try to do stuff? Do you try to go out, I guess, with your friends or anything like that? And she just said, look, I meet my friends, or I'll take my dog for a walk on the beach or whatever. But, you know, if I went out or did anything too crazy, I'd just be tired for the rest of the week. So that's the sacrifice, I guess, she had to make. And these were the choices she was making at the age of like 13, 14, 15, all the way up to her teenage years. And obviously for most people who make them, it doesn't fully pay off to this extent, even if they get a lot of self-satisfaction out of whatever level they get to. But I'm just so happy, and I think everyone in Grange and her old coach, Grace Mead, who obviously nursed her up through those teenage years, and even indeed her parents and family, should be taking some amount of pride tonight, because it is obviously her achievement, but it's a whole lot of other people's achievement as well.
Yeah, great stuff as ever from Cathal Dennehy on the Olympic show there yesterday. The full piece available now on our YouTube channel and on the OTB Sports app. at 8:49 on this Tuesday morning. Delighted to be joined by Frances Cryan. She was the first female rower to represent Ireland at the Olympics when she went in the single sculls at the Moscow Games in 1980. Frances, good morning to you. How are you keeping?
Good morning. Very good, thank you.
So, talk to us about the rowing so far. Who's impressed you? Who's the Team Ireland superstar in your eyes so far?
Well, of course, it has to be Zanita. She's just looks very, very strong on the water, and she looks as if she's got everything together for these games. So far, she's dominated all the races through. She looks very smooth, very strong, and we're all rooting for her. And as with all the other members of the Irish team, so I'm hoping that her semi-finals will go to plan. The other girls then in the doubles and in the fours, Zanita is a great role model for them all. And as she said, and I've heard during commentaries, that there's a great team effort with all the ladies and with all the men on the Team Ireland. So I suppose that's given them all a spur on. I was very disappointed for the two lads, Ronan and Philip. I mean, they have put so much into it, but hopefully they'll get over this and move on,
It seems like a very hard way to go out. It seems that they couldn't really put their finger on what was going wrong or how to get synchronised properly. To put it bluntly, I mean, you'll know a hell of a lot more about this than I do, but can that just happen sometimes? Like, in a way, Zanita just has to worry about herself, but Philip and Ronan were sort of saying that they just weren't in sync properly when they got into the water in Tokyo.
Yeah, it is very difficult, and I suppose it's been a very difficult build-up with the games cancelled last year, and then with this COVID and training. You have to. It's miles and miles and miles on the water to gel together, and whether they've had that preparation this year, I'm not sure. I know they have had camps and great training down in the base in Cork, but. I suppose the games were on, the games were off. It's hard. I know it was hard for everybody, but it affects everybody differently. But they've many years ahead of them. I know they probably won't want to hear that now, because it's a 4-year cycle and it's a huge commitment. And it's different when you're kind of living at two different ends of the country to try and train and gel and do everything together.
What?
But, it's a great part. The rowing are so strong this year that it's fantastic. Imagine 6 crews in semi-finals for rowing. I mean, that's never happened before. So it just shows you how strong the sport is at the present. So it's brilliant. It's absolutely great for rowing.
Yeah.
They're up there, one of the top sports at the minute.
Absolutely. Can I just ask you on Zanita then? What are you seeing differently from Zanita at this Games compared to her previous Olympic outings? Because, I don't know, the Olympic flag sometimes has spelt the worst for her personally. Her performances maybe wouldn't be up to her own standard, but it seems that she's motoring well so far this summer.
Well, she's very, very, very fit looking. Extremely strong looking. I suppose that that would be years and years of just training, and mileage. You can see she's very sinewy, and I just thought she was very strong, very great leg drive. Her whole stroke is very powerful. She looks very comfortable. She makes it look easy, but yet if you look at her strokes, I mean, she's driving through with the legs. She's a very, very compact stroke. She's getting very efficient in the water. So I really hope this is her year. I mean, she's put so much on the line for us, and she's sacrificed so much, I'm sure, for that since 2012. So I'd say it's do or die this year for her.
Frances, I'm just curious as well. Like, we had Niall O'Toole on Off the Ball last week, and he was talking about Paul O'Donovan being, at 26 years of age, he's a world beater, and certainly one of the most talented rowers out there. A peak age for rowers, like for someone who doesn't follow the sport as closely as yourself. Paul O'Donovan being 26 years of age, but then you see Sunita at 39 doing incredible things as well. Like, is the type of sport that if you condition yourself right, you can go on for longer, or is what Sunita's doing at 39 a little bit out of the ordinary?
I would say I would say definitely it's a little bit out of the ordinary. Now, you know, I've been looking at different age profiles of different rowers, probably in the single sculls, mentally and physically, probably mid-30s, you would be at your best. If you know, there's not too many people who will put the commitment and the training in for those years, because it takes huge dedication, huge sacrifices, like for everybody even around you. So it's very hard to commit to that level for that length. So that's why she's so unique, and that's why I'm wishing her so much success. Paul has years ahead of him. Now, lightweight rowing is very, very competitive, because there's all sports are competitive, but lightweight, I mean, it's just across the board. It's who's the fittest on the day, who, you know, because you're weighing in, there's an awful lot of different angles to it, your diet, everything. But I think around 35, 36 is, mentally you would be very mature, you would have great racing. For the body and the mind would be at its peak. But again, there's not too many people can commit to that.
Absolutely, that's for sure. And like when I look ahead to tomorrow's final with the women's four, like Afra Keogh, Emer Lamb, Fiona Murtagh and Emily Hegarty, really, really exciting, because they were only 0.2 of a second off Australia, the favourites for this in their semi-final. Like, can you read much into the timings? Like, it's different, I guess. The swimming, you can read a lot into the timings because the conditions are the same for all the athletes. But especially in that Tokyo Bay, where the waters can get a little bit choppy, and with this typhoon there at the moment, certainly it's a bit choppier around Tokyo. But is rowing a sport where you kind of have to, I guess, take timings with a pinch of salt?
I think so. Again, as you said, it depends on conditions. It depends on crosswinds, headwinds, tailwinds. Some people can cope better with rougher waters. It depends on where you have trained. Others then excel on calm water. But normally at that level, I mean, when they get to Olympic level, they have a good what word would I use? They'd have a good base where they have raced in all conditions over years and trained. So it's down to who wants it the most. And I suppose in a four, you have four girls. But it's the team spirit too. It's the people around them. It's the way they'll go out. It's do or die at this stage now. But the competition is, everybody is the racing will be fantastic, I'd say, in the finals. Especially for Sunita's race. I mean, you have you have that young Russian girl, you have the New Zealand Emma Twigg, you know, you have some great scholars there, and some of them peak at Olympics. So you could get a few surprise results.
For sure. It's going to be a great few days tomorrow morning. Hopefully, if this storm doesn't come in too badly, everything will go to plan. 12:20 tonight Irish time is when the Irish interest gets underway. Just a couple of the key times. 10-2 is when those fours rowing final with the women takes place, and then you've got obviously Paul O'Donovan and Fintan McCarthy at 3:30. And then you've got Aoife Casey and Margaret Cremen at 3:40. So they're just a couple of the moments to keep an eye out for early tomorrow morning. And then as the day goes on, there'll be more Irish rowers in action. I did, Francis, just want to ask you about 1980 briefly before we let you go. The Moscow Games, when you represented Ireland. The Leitrim Observer and the readers of the Leitrim Observer voted it as Leitrim's greatest ever sporting moment, beating the 1994 Connacht football final. I presume it's viewed by you with great fondness at this point, and when you think back to 1980, it's a phenomenal memory.
Well, it is. It was great to get there. I suppose it's so many years ago now. God, it's unbelievable. Time goes so quick. We had a great time in Moscow. I mean, weather was just like what we've had here in Ireland the last week, really hot. There was a great team spirit, and the Russians looked after us very well. The facilities over there were wonderful. I have great memories from it.
How much was that period all down to yourself and to the people in and around Leitrim at that point, rather than, I guess, the high performance unit that is producing so many top class rowers at this point? Were you almost an exception to the rule at that point, Francis, in terms of qualifying and performing so well at an Olympic Games?
Oh God. Well, I got wonderful support from people in Leitrim. I mean, I had two boats at the time. One was left in Europe so that I could race. I wouldn't have to be waiting for my boat to be transported. And both boats were called Leitrim 1 and Leitrim 2 because they had been bought by the Leitrim people through fundraising. And I had a wonderful team in the area who would have trained me doing weights, especially Egan Angle, who was my full-time coach all the time. And he would have planned and plotted everything. So, yeah, I got wonderful support. There was a national squad, but because we were based in Leitrim, we would have been outside it. And women's rowing wasn't as strong back then as it would be today. So it's wonderful to see, what's happening now in rowing.
Can I just ask you, Francis, as well? Sorry, fire ahead, Francis.
No, when you see like Paul O'Donovan, Gary O'Donovan, Finton, Zanita, and all the other young girls, Aileen, Dominique, Aoife, Margaret, the whole lot of them, the four girls as well. It's wonderful to see them up there at Olympic level and racing at World Cups all the last couple of years.
I really enjoyed, as per usual, Paul O'Donovan's post-row interview. He always has something decent to say, and he told the people to go to sleep, that we're thinking of staying up to watch him in his rowing. He also spoke, though, Francis, about their training camp in Italy and how they kind of trained for the humidity in Tokyo by having heaters in their bathroom and kind of rowing and doing little bits of aerobics in their bathrooms. Like, I'm sure even back in your day as well, for the 80 games in Moscow, there must have been some strange training practices and training methods in rowing to I guess prepare your body for the conditions you're going to face at an Olympic Games.
Not really, no. We didn't have any. We didn't think out of the box like he is. No, we just kind of acclimatized as much as we could when we got there, and you hope for the best and you said a prayer. No, it was different times. I mean, like we did go to like I went to Germany to a Ruder Academy. I went to America to train. We did different things like that. And we got different coaches over, like Mike Sprattling came over. I went over at one stage to England and trained with Steve Redgrave for maybe a weekend. So we were trying different things. But for conditions like, no, we had no heater. Well, we had plenty of heaters, but we didn't think of using them in the bathroom.
It's interesting, Francis, because you were speaking there a moment ago about how a peak of a rower's career is in their mid-30s. I think you were in your early 20s for Moscow. So did you come close to qualifying for Los Angeles 4 years later, or what happened in between?
Oh, politics in the sport, unfortunately. And it was really a men's sport. The rowing wasn't very strong that year. So I think I was about the only one would have I don't think the rowing union were too wanted that, because I was measured for the uniform. I was ready to go 6 weeks beforehand. I just got word that I wasn't travelling, that I couldn't guarantee I'd be in the top six. So their standards were very high back then. Right.
So sorry, they wouldn't.
That was more or less it.
Right. They wouldn't let you travel unless you could basically guarantee a medal standard of a performance.
Well, they said I had got reached seventh in Moscow, so they wanted nearly to guarantee that I'd be in the top six, and that's impossible to do. But I was looking like I was 7th, 8th still. So I suppose after spending 4 years training for the Los Angeles Olympics, it was very hard to go back. I went back for 2 years more towards the Seoul ones, but I packed it in then in 86. I suppose I just felt that the writing was on the wall, that unless I nearly could guarantee a medal back then, I suppose I wasn't part of the Dublin scene, and that wouldn't have helped.
Can I just ask Francis?
I enjoyed it as much as as long as I did it, and I've no regrets.
Absolutely. Well, that's the main thing for sure. We spoke about Philip Doyle and Roland Byrne's disappointment, and certainly it's been a nightmare Olympics for them. I saw one piece of analysis out of their performance talking about the fact that they had 3 races in 3 days in searing heat, which was always going to be to prove problematic. Like, is that an issue as well, that for some rowers maybe the schedules can kind of work against them, especially if the weather is that hot or if the water is choppy, and especially if you have races in consecutive days, that can make it quite difficult for a rower, because your recovery time is crucial, I'd imagine, Francis.
Oh, that would be huge, because when you think of it, you're 7 minutes, at max output of the body. I mean, it's crazy stuff, really. I mean, to expect the body to recover again. I know you have been training for that, and that's why, like when I was rowing, we would be doing 5-6 hours a day, every day of the week, all year, maybe there 3 weeks in September. So when so you're training to get that stamina into the body, and but yet when you race 3 days, one after the other, it's draining, very, very draining. So again, it will be down to your fitness level. But those guys shouldn't be disappointed. I mean, they're young, and this will stand to them. I mean, we've all had huge disappointments, but it makes you stronger. You learn from from results like that, and they'll go on and they'll really, really be better athletes as a result of this. I know it's hard to take it now, but they're still in a B final. So there's nothing, it's brilliant.
Absolutely.
It's just that their expectations was probably for a medal. But
yeah.
Normally Irish athletes would love to be in the top 10, and there'll be a lot of them mightn't make it for different reasons.
Yeah, it's amazing how the standard has completely changed, and how the base expectation of a team in the Olympic Games for Ireland has completely shifted, where medals are kind of the only currency that counts in that team. It's brilliant to see. Francis, it's been great hearing from you today. I know that Cliona Foley did a brilliant piece with you on our Off the Bench podcast a couple of years ago, and that's absolutely worth digging out. And it's been great to chat to you again this morning, Francis. So thanks a million for taking the call.
Not at all, thank you. And I'm wishing all the athletes, but especially the rowers, the very best of luck. We'd be rooting for them. Thank you so much.
Cheers, Francis. Francis Cryan there, and a 1980 Olympian with Ireland there. And as you can hear, probably should have been an Olympian again in 1984, but unfortunately politics got in the way. So a story maybe of a little bit of heartbreak there for Francis Cryan down through the years. But a brilliant breakdown and of the rowers, what's important, what to look out for when it comes to myself and yourself, Shane, people who aren't necessarily experts in it. Of course, like we will label ourselves as experts right now, but she breaks the sport down in a very digestible way.
Well, it's the fact that rowing is so tough individually. Like if you're an individual sports person generally, but especially a rower, something as mentally and physically tough. Like even chatting to Kathleen Noble on Saturday, the training these guys go through is to say it would be intense would be putting it mildly, because as Niall O'Toole said with Ger last week on Friday night, it's like the old East German anecdote where you throw 8 eggs against a wall and whichever 2 stick are your pair for the double sculls. Like it's just horrific, if that's the right term. And their training that they go through, what they put their bodies through, is just so intense. And how they're able to even stand there after rowing at the Olympics and do an interview. It's one of those sports where even speaking, you'd imagine, would sap the energy out of you after the amount they've exerted. So kudos to all the rowers, and listen, it would be lovely to get a medal, and I know Fintan McCarthy and Paula Donovan are hot favourites. So hopefully, at least there, maybe with Sunita as well, we can get a medal, and the women's fours as well. We'll watch later tomorrow morning. So it's all to play for.
That women's four were so good at the weekend, like really, really good. After Kyo, Emer Lamb, Fiona Murta, and Emily Hegarty, 10-2 tomorrow morning is when they're off. And if you want to get yourself completely carried away and really, really excited, forget about just Tokyo. We're talking about domination over the next few years, because Fintan McCarthy is 24. Paul O'Donovan is still only 27. We're hearing there from an actual rowing expert that mid-30s is where your peak is. So yes, they're in an unbelievably competitive sport in lightweight sculls, but gosh, this pair are so exciting. They're an unbelievable hope for a gold medal at this point, and 3:30 tomorrow morning Irish time is when they're off. Phil Egan, how are you?
Very well, Owen. How are you doing?
All good. Will O'Callaghan and Sheahan have been up all hours watching Serbia versus Canada and the basketball and the women's triathlon from start to finish. Were you with them?
No, I certainly wasn't. No. Look, we're up early anyway.
Correct.
So it's a case of looking back at things. I just watched the Ireland Sevens team there. They're after playing their 9th place playoff semi-final. So they've beaten South Korea 31-0. But obviously the story there is what happened earlier on with the win over Kenya. It wasn't good enough to get into the quarterfinals because they're conceding that last minute try. They had to win by 8. So you could kind of see the shackles were off a bit in that game there. So they'll probably they could play Japan or Kenya. They might end up playing Kenya again for 9th place. And they were throwing it around with a bit more freedom, less pressure on them in that match in the last few minutes. But look, the Olympics are class. I know people would have been sceptical at the start because there's no crowds there, but I think the only thing that maybe the athletics is going to be the one that suffers, I think, from that the most. When you watch the sprint finals and the gun goes and you hear the roar of the crowd, that's not going to be there anymore. But some of the other things have been brilliant. And what an Olympic so far for Mona McSharry to get to an Olympic final. You heard her saying after the race that she's going to have to revise her goals, move the goalposts, because she was meant to make a final in 2024, so she's ahead of schedule. So she's going to have to sit down and think, right, what do I need to achieve now in Paris? And the beauty of it is Paris is only 3 years away, because obviously we lost a year last year.
There are certain people who will have suffered big time from the Olympics being pushed back. Mona McSharry is not one of those people. She's benefited hugely from the extra year. She's a year older, with a much better opportunity for success, which we've seen over the last couple of days. And then on top of that, you've only got to wait 3 more years, and a lot of that will be done in the United States for her as well. So just a couple of things we wanted to touch on with you, Phil, before we wrap up. Just a couple of the football stories. Jason Knight and Raphael Varane in the headlines for 2 very different reasons.
Yeah, I suppose from an Irish point of view, Jason Knight is a player that we're all pretty excited by, becoming a regular in the Derby midfield as a teenager, getting the captain's armband. We thought then when Wayne Rooney was appointed Derby manager, that could only be good news for Jason Knight, because he was going to learn from one of the best players to grace the Premier League. And, it was a tough season last season for Derby. They obviously avoided relegation on the final day. They've huge financial worries at the moment. They've very few first team players. So Wayne Rooney decided to join into a first team training squad the other day because they are short in numbers. And lo and behold, he's absolutely done Jason Knight in a tackle with his ankle. So he's out of the World Cup qualifiers, which is not good.
Disaster. Bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. And it is the Stephen Kenny curse once again.
Must be walking under ladders every day.
Quickly on Raphael Varane.
Yeah, look, good signing. Some people would say the fact that he's 28 and he was in the last year of his contract, that 40 million euro is a lot of money. But Manchester United have money. It's a case of, does Varane make United a better team? Absolutely. He's a serious upgrade on Lindelof. Look, it doesn't mean Lindelof's United career is over. He's probably still going to feature in games. I think now United get this deal done. Obviously, the Sancho deal is done. They have to be looking at a central midfielder, because they can't keep going back to McTominay and Fred in big games. If they want to progress, they have to go to that next level. They need somebody in there that can absolutely run midfield on their own, obviously with players around them, but I'm talking about can dominate in there. And United can play more front foot football rather than having to be reactive. They've got to be more aggressive, and I think that's why they need a central midfielder. So I would think central midfielder ahead of a striker.
Right, okay, that is the wish list for Manchester United fans this morning. Very quickly, Phil, what is the thing to look out for from an Irish perspective over the next couple of hours?
Well, obviously the swimmers, we've got swimmers back in action. Dara Green goes in the heats of the men's 200 metre breaststroke, and Daniel Whiffen goes in the 800 metre freestyle. In between those races, around midday, but in between all that, the Irish quartet go in the 4x200 metre freestyle, and they're obviously the ones in there. The big story in terms of the home nation was obviously Osaka getting knocked out of the tennis. Obviously, she was the poster athlete for Japan, beaten in straight sets by Marketa Vondrousova in the women's singles. So, yeah, that was a big one. Obviously, we hadn't seen Osaka in action since she pulled out of the French Open, so disappointing there. But I think, obviously, I'm a boxing fan. It was great to see Eoin Walsh get the boxers back up and running, because 3 defeats in a row, and you were starting to think it's all down to Kelly Harrington. But Walsh now just 1 win away from a medal, and the draw's opened up a little bit because one of the top seeds has crashed out as well. So who knows? But
bit of luck at long last for the Irish boxers.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is down to the luck of the draw. I know obviously they're really skilled boxers, but you do need that bit of luck.
Yeah, you certainly do. Phil Egan, good stuff. Thanks a million. OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. On OTB Sports Radio today, we've got Bernard Brogan from 12, Ronnie Delaney Legends interview from 1, and Dadcast from 3 o'clock. Before all that, here is a special sit down myself and Ger had with cricket legend Michael Holding.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
To me, you need your best line-out caller. So if I was picking a team, I would 100% have Ian Henderson. I think he's the best line-out caller there.
At times it's becoming farcical, and you have to really feel for these players and management. This isn't normal in any shape or form. This is not a Lions tour as we know it.
I don't agree with it. I think it's the wrong decision. It's harsh on Johnny Sexton. Another kick in the teeth.
For the best Lions coverage this summer, subscribe to the OTB Rugby podcast stream on the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Why We Kneel, How We Rise is a new book by Michael Holding. It's out now, and we're very happy to have the opportunity to speak with Michael. A very good afternoon to you. How are you getting on?
Hi, good afternoon, Jerry. I'm fine, thanks. I would love to see a bit more sun, but I'll survive.
Well, it's funny. This is one of the few weeks in Irish history where we've had back-to-back days with the actual sun shining. So wherever you are in the world, you should be in Ireland right now.
Okay.
Your new book has a series of history lessons and personal stories from some of the world's most famous athletes. So Naomi Osaka, Thierry Henry, Michael Johnson, and loads more. And I wonder what that experience was like for you, gathering these stories and putting them together and trying to form them into a narrative. In the end, it turned out there were so many commonalities between their experiences that you didn't really have much work to do to tie them together, but the work was the history around the difficulties that people of colour have had since the dawn of time. So how was that emotionally for you to go on that journey?
First of all, Joe, I wanted to say thank you for recognizing where the work was. You know, talking to the great stars and all that, as far as I'm concerned, was to introduce to people the fact that irrespective of your background, irrespective of the country in which you live, irrespective of how rich you were, irrespective of how famous you were, once the color of your skin is dark, you have an extra hurdle to take. The rest of it was hard work. Going and doing the discovery, going and doing the research, and being able to identify so much that has been hidden from us throughout history, that was disturbing. The treatment of people with dark skin, that was disturbing. But talking to these stars, I was spellbound, as a matter of fact, talking to some of them, because what they were telling me is something I already know. But I'm trying to use them to explain to people the fact that it doesn't matter where you're from.
I think for me, one of the most interesting parts about this is your own journey to the point where you begin to see the racism that is endemic around the world, that there's a point in your life where you didn't even notice that this was something, and then it's kind of a slow, steady awakening on your part. You're like, hang on a second, I see this now everywhere I go, and that's captured really well in the book through personal stories. I think the other very powerful aspect of it, though, is that very, very coldly and very rationally, you explain where the racism originates from, and the decision to write a book about that. It's not a history lesson that is taught in schools. It's not a history lesson that people want to hear.
No.
So what's the response like when you're telling people, you need to pay attention to this?
Well, to be honest, so far, I've not had any pushback from people that I've met or people that have said anything to me. A lot of the feedback, Gerard, has been people saying, oh, I didn't know this. Thanks for opening my eyes. I need to now investigate this a bit further so that I can really be educated. That is what I've been getting from a lot of people. I don't know what social media is doing. I would assume and I would think that there is a lot happening on social media, people pushing back on people cursing or whatever. I have no idea because I don't do social media. But the ordinary man in the street, I worked at Royal Ascot recently, and walking into the stands, walking into the racetrack, people were there shouting, "Hi, Mike, I like what I hear you saying on Sky." That's the reaction that I've been getting. When I did that program on Good Morning Britain, the TV program, at the end of it, somebody came and pushed a note through my letterbox. This is someone I did not even know. I have kept the note. I have it here and I'll read it for you, Jer. Because this is a family that I did not know, but they listened to me on Good Morning Breakfast, and this is a note they'll push through my letterbox. Dear Michael, just saw your interview on GMB. So very passionate and empowered. Very eloquently said. It has certainly opened our eyes. Thank you very much. And then it's signed by the husband and wife. So that is the sort of response I've been getting. And I know, Jer, that, as I say to people, we have been brainwashed. Not just blacks, whites, everybody. We have all been brainwashed to suit a certain narrative. And when people are discovering the real world and the real truth, they are grateful to be discovering it.
When did you realize this?
When did I realize that we were brainwashed?
Yeah.
From early, from different things that I started to discover and from different things that people started to talk about. You know, there's so much that has happened that they try to use to push a particular narrative. I grew up in a Christian household. My mother sang in the church choir. My father was an altar boy. So I had to go to church every Sunday growing up, Sunday school, whatever. Every picture, every photograph, every sculpture I saw of Jesus Christ was a white man with blonde hair and blue eyes. That is what I was taught. And you come to absorb that and you think, that is the fact. That is the way Jesus Christ looked. But when you start to get educated properly and you get to understand the world, you know that it is impossible for Jesus Christ to have looked like that at that time of the existence of earth in that part of the world. It is impossible. Every movie that was made, every play that they had about Jesus Christ and Christianity, the man that betrayed Jesus Christ, Judas, was portrayed as a black man. Again, that is instilling in your mind evil. Black man, he is evil. He betrayed Jesus Christ. That is what the brainwashing has been all about. And that is just one instance. There are so many others.
So, as a child, right, you bear witness to this. But at what point, when did your education begin, and when did the penny drop for you that this was happening in the world?
Well, it's a process. At different times, you think to yourself, no, what they have been telling me, how can this be true? How can this be real? And as a child, I didn't know that Jesus Christ could not have looked like that. You just absorb it. That's what they tell you. Later on in life, when you start to learn about the world and you start to understand what the world is all about, that is when you get to discover these things. When I was growing up, they told me Christopher Columbus discovered Jamaica in 1494 with the 3 ships, the Santa Maria, the Pinta. How can you discover somewhere that people are already living, people in the area are already trading amongst themselves, and you tell me that you discover Jamaica? You made Europe aware of Jamaica. But the arrogance of Europeans, it does not exist until they know. So they discovered it.
Is it fair to say, Michael, that part of your sporting career would have helped in this, actually travelling to Europe, actually seeing the world?
Definitely, Eoin. I tell people traveling is the greatest education. You need to travel the world to experience different cultures, experience different countries, experience different people. It's the greatest education. Being able to play cricket and travel the world has helped me enormously. I learned even more. I heard about South Africa. I heard about apartheid. I heard about different things happening at different stages in South Africa. When I started to go to South Africa, I started to learn more and more. Going to a country, you learn. I have made friends in South Africa amongst Africans, amongst British-based South Africans, Black South Africans. I've made friends amongst everyone. And you get to hear all the stories. I get to learn more and more about the country. Going all over the world, you learn.
That process that you're talking about, that you go through, how do we accelerate that process for other people? How do we chip away at centuries of that European arrogance when it comes to our education system, when it comes to human interaction, when it comes to being kind to each other?
By teaching the truth, Jer. Teaching the truth so that everyone knows what the real history is. We don't want to be taught the edited history. We don't want to be taught the history that suits one set of people. All the history that I learned was about the Europeans and the white race. I never knew and was taught anything about what great things Black people and people of color had done. You hear, we're in a pandemic right now, sir. We hear that it was an English doctor that is the father of inoculation and immunization because he did this experiment with cowpox and smallpox. Before he was born, an African, a Black man, introduced inoculations to the Western world. In Boston, Massachusetts, when smallpox was destroying all of Boston, he went to his master. He was a slave, owned by a pastor, by the way. Went to his master and told his master about what he had seen and learned in Africa, about cutting the skin of a healthy person and using pus from an unhealthy person, putting it on the skin so that the body could identify this as an enemy, and that is how you get immunization. That is from an African way before Jepsner, whatever his name is, was born. But Black man, African slave, we're not going to give him any credit.
So when you write a book like this, it's your part in trying to make people aware of this, and it's a starter for conversations that are difficult conversations probably for a lot of people to go through, because we all have to check our biases and go, actually, how implicated am I, and how implicated is everybody listening and watching in maintaining all of the systems that are preventing equality. Why did you decide to write the book? What?
Before we go to why I decided to write the book, let us understand the situation. People cannot be blamed for believing what they are taught. So I want people to recognize that first of all. Don't blame me for believing that Jesus was a white man with blonde hair and blue eyes. I don't blame a white man for trying to preach that, because that is what he has learned. We're going back to the institutionalized racism and the systemic racism. That is the problem. Too many people have been taught the wrong thing. Why do you think one race feels superior to another? Because that is what they were made to believe. All the stories that I talk about there, in going back in the history, about these scientists, these so-called scientists, trying to categorize people and saying the Black man's brain is small because his head is, all that rubbish was done because they had to make sure that when they start to do these things to these people, they do not feel guilty. It is okay. We are going to brainwash these people into believing that these people are subhuman. So when they start to abuse them, when they do whatever they want to do to them, they are not guilty. They don't feel guilty. And that is the problem. The brainwashing that took place years ago. How do we solve that? By the same education I'm talking about, by educating people so that they understand and know that we're all human beings, we're all on the same level. I can bowl faster than you, that's how we want to be judged. I can run faster than you, that's how we want to be judged. I can do a mathematical equation faster than you, that's how we want to be judged. Not by the fact that you think, oh, he's a black man or he's a man of color, I am white, I have to be superior to him. That doesn't work.
It doesn't work for anybody. Like,
no,
it's a really...
That's what has been going on for centuries. And that is what people believe. You have people being born today, being born and thinking to themselves, oh hell, my skin is dark. I'm inferior to that person who is light-skinned. That is why my mother had problems with her family for marrying a black man. That is why the skin lightening cream that you see being used all over the world is a multi-billion-dollar business, because it is in people's head that the lighter their skin, the easier it is for them to get forward.
The match last year, which was rained off, or the delay where you were speaking on Sky, which kind of kicked off the video that went viral. The transformation in your role and the role that you've had since then has been hugely important in having conversations and bringing that conversation to areas that maybe this conversation might not have been happening. Were you at any point conscious that was going to happen? Like, how quickly did you realize that actually, you know what, there's something happening here that I have seized or has seized me, and I need to keep going with this?
I never intended to. When I said what I said on Sky, I thought that's it. I've spoken my piece, and time to move on. Let me go back and do my day job now. I'm back to being a cricket commentator. I never ever thought about writing a book. I never ever thought about what's happening now with so many people calling, wanting interviews and wanting me to talk. I never ever thought about that. That has not been my life. Throughout my entire career, I never spoke about racism, because I would just say, sure, no problem. Those are idiots. I'll go home to Jamaica and I'll be fine. I'll go back to my friends and family who love me and everything will be fine. I never thought about that. The reason this book was written is, for want of a better word, pressure from people around me. Thierry Henry calling me, my ghostwriter calling me. Even Ian Ward in the commentary box said to me after we were done and went back there to the commentary box, he said to me, so Mikey, what next? And I looked at him quizzically, what do you mean, what next? I have said what I have to say. But of course, constantly people coming to you and say, no, you can't stop there, let us go further. That's why the book came about.
Are you happy now that that pressure came on you?
Yes, I'm happy that the book has been written, because I have seen a positive impact from the book going. And as I said, I've had so much positive feedback from people. A lot of people have said, oh, I am glad I'm hearing all this. Because people were just going through their life, just floating along, not recognizing anything that was wrong around them. And people were even thinking, oh, he has a chip on his shoulder. You have heard the usual reports from people when a black man speaks up. Oh, there goes another angry black man. And they don't understand why the man is angry.
Do you think that society has progressed to the point where the reaction would have been different 20 years ago, for example, had you written this book then?
No, I don't think so. We have seen throughout history, Eoin, that whenever a black man stands up and speaks his mind and criticizes the treatment that he's getting, that those people get ostracized. From many years ago to present, Colin Kaepernick wasn't 20 years ago. He started to protest about the treatment of people of color in America. His career came to an end immediately. No NFL team signed him at the end of that year when his contract was up. So you don't have to go back 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
The the decision that Kaepernick made in taking the knee is a hugely important moment in I think a rebirth of activism from athletes. And we've seen where that went last year with the kneeling before matches. How do we make sure that the kneeling before matches is more important and more powerful than the pre-match handshake, which obviously was brought in 10 years previously, and it's not just part of the day-to-day? Like, I guess what I'm concerned about is that the momentum behind the movement for equality was huge last year. Unfortunately, it was driven by tragedy and murder.
Mm-hmm.
How do we make sure that people continue to listen to your voice, have these conversations, that the next generation of cricketers and American footballers and soccer players and tennis players use the platform they have to help the education piece happen?
Sure, it's a partnership here. If all we're going to have is people taking the knee and people demonstrating and people talking, nothing is going to get any better. It has to be a partnership. And I see that partnership building. I see corporations and big money getting involved to try to level the playing field and to make sure that a lot of the victimization that took place doesn't take place any longer. And I use America more as an example, because I see it more in America than I see it in the United Kingdom. Big companies, Bank of America, Amazon, Nike, JP Morgan, all of them are putting money towards projects to help people of color. We know the history of America. We know, and I've written about it in the book, houses were built, and on the title, it was stated, no black person must own any house or any bill or anything in this part. When you can have that, you know the situation. So when you have corporations and big money going towards trying to level the playing field, you know you're moving in the right direction. I want people to continue taking the knee, but taking the knee alone doesn't do anything. There has to be action beyond taking the knee. You have people that are getting so frustrated that they want to stop taking the knee because they say they don't see any action. But if you stop taking the knee, what pressure is there for people to make change? You have to keep it in people's face. You have got to keep the focus there. You have got to make people aware that you have not given up, that you will continue to show that gesture to support the fact that Black Lives Matter, and irrespective of how frustrated you get, keep on doing it.
So there is an importance to that. While it's symbol, it's an important symbol, and it needs to be followed up with legislation. It needs to be followed up with, as you said, collaboration, partnership with people in other communities who are going to have difficult conversations about their role in structural racism.
Yes, these conversations are not going to be easy. But at the same time, people are recognizing that what people have been saying is the truth. And people are recognizing that good people want to make a better world. Jerry, you'll always have people that don't care. They're happy, they're comfortable with their life, they don't care. But a lot of people who are happy and comfortable with their lives still want to see a better world. And they will try to do what they think is best to get a better world. And that's all we need. People willing to listen, to hear, to understand, to recognize, and say, yes, let us try and make things better.
It must be pretty exhausting for you on a personal level to continue to have to carry this. I'm always very conscious that we're two white presenters of a show here in Dublin, and we're asking you to share your experiences of racism and to carry that burden to relive all the horrible things that have happened. And, I can only imagine that after a certain period of time, you're like, geez, I have to tell the story again.
Jerry, I just said the same thing to the lady at Simon & Schuster. She keeps on updating my schedule as to who I have to speak to. And I've done approaching 30 different interviews now, whether it's for newspapers, magazines, radio stations, podcasts, television. And she sent me a new schedule with another one added going forward again. And I said to her, Sabah, please let this be the last updated schedule that you're sending me. I am tired of saying the same thing over and over and over again. I've spoken to enough people. So, that is in response to what you just asking me about how difficult it is. It's overbearing. I am dying for cricket to start again so I can go back to my day job.
But I think it's a key point. One of the most interesting texts on racism over the last while is why I'm no longer speaking to white people about the issue of race. And it's like, it's actually not your burden, and it's not people of colour's burden, and it's not black people's burden to solve the issue of racism, because you didn't start it. It's actually...
And we can't do it on our own either.
It's white Europeans and it's white Americans, and it's up to us to try and fix this.
Well, yes, but as I said, it has to be a partnership. There's no point one set of people trying to fix it. Because if you say, okay, it's white people that have to fix it, black people have to be involved as well. They have 100%. To understand everything that is going on. Because there are a lot of hate on both sides here, and we need to get rid of that.
There must have been some joy in writing the book, some bit of surprise,
no joy,
some good fun.
Absolutely no joy, sir.
No bit of.
I had was interaction with some of those big stars. Because
that's what I was asking. Yeah. Is there any parts of that that's
definitely? I had an hour with Michael Johnson, and I've always admired him. Usain Bolt is from Jamaica, so you're accustomed to Usain Bolt to a degree. But the hour that I spent with Michael Johnson, the phone call I got from Thierry Henry, those things lifted me. Naomi Osaka taking time out to contribute to this book when she's, as we have seen, is suffering so much from mental stress right now and stopping playing tennis. Adam Goods in Australia, Makaya Ntini opening up his soul to tell me why he ran to the ground instead of driving on the bus. Those things made me feel good that these people were willing to open their lives and open their souls and let me in. But the other aspects of the book, I don't feel good about them. I cannot feel good about reading the history of what took place in America. But it had to be done, because if it don't show people why they are sick, they can't get better.
It did have to be done, and that I think is the tragedy of the world that we have created. But hopefully this book helps to start the conversation. And I think, I know that obviously your legacy before this was one of the best fast bowlers in history, but your legacy is going to be the work that you've done in this part of your career as a broadcaster. And I hope that you do continue it, despite the fact that it must be exhausting.
Well, I hope that it will make a difference. Writing this book was difficult. If I get the results that I'm hoping for, that people will learn from the book and people will recognize what was wrong and try to make things better, that will make me a very happy man. Because I won't live to see it, but I'm hoping for a better world for my children and my grandchildren and great-grandchildren and people like that. That's what I'm hoping for.
Well, that is, I think, all that any of us can ever really hope for. And as I said, look, we don't take the burden that it is for you to speak about this again and again lightly. I really do appreciate the amount of time that you spent explaining again, I'd say for the 100th time, stuff that really should be unnecessary, but unfortunately is necessary, Michael. So the book is called Why We Kneel, How We Rise. Michael Holding, thank you so much for your time.
No, thanks for having me, sir. The further this word spreads, the better. And I'm hoping that it does.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
So, for the first time since 1938, no less, the Lions overcame a 9-point half-time deficit in a test match. That game was also against South Africa, by the way. But on Saturday in Cape Town, Warren Gatland's version won the second half by 19 points to 5, a complete turnaround in their fortunes in that second 40. To discuss, very happy to say, we have Rory O'Connor of the Irish Independent. We also have Gordon Darcy, part of the last tour of South Africa, and fresh from his charity cycle, which we will certainly mention and urge you to donate to before we're done this evening. Gordon, we might start with the match. Half-time, 9-point gap, 12-3. Everything you would think. I mean, if South Africans were to dream up a scenario and scoreboard pressure and the type of game it was it was all going swimmingly for them. Were you worried on the Lions' behalf at half-time?
Yeah, I think you kind of felt the momentum was all with South Africa, and it hadn't have been that. When I say it hadn't been that physical, we were expecting a little bit more fireworks. The Lions were holding, I suppose, parity in the physical stakes, but South Africa they just looked like they were going in, and they hadn't had to expend as much energy, and they also had a try or 2 tries almost disallowed in the first half. So the momentum just seemed to be going with them, and the Lions just couldn't get a foothold.
A couple of things happened in the second half, Rory. Not least the penalty count just turned on its head. So the Lions guilty of some very avoidable penalties in the first half. You think of Tom Curry's late hit on the kicker, for instance, and again, that's just what South Africa want. Second half, let me give you the run of penalties South Africa conceded in a row here, by the way. 41st minute, 43rd minute, 46th minute, 53rd minute, 55th minute and 62nd minute. And then obviously they conceded another 3 minutes from time. So there were 5 penalties in 14 minutes conceded. And I would put it to you, it wasn't like the Lions were taking them through 28 phases to win these penalties. Like I remember Sam Warburton in commentary just saying, the Lions keep the ball here for 3, 4, 5 phases, they're getting a penalty.
Yeah, I mean, Gordon was in the dressing room for one of the greatest half-time turnarounds of all in that Leinster-Northampton game. But, I would think that Warren Gatland played a role and his coaching staff played a role in kind of coolly analysing what had gone wrong in that first half. And kind of pointing them in the direction of what they could do to turn it around. South Africa, whose front row had been dominant during the first half, decided to change their entire front row and send on what was perceived to be their stronger front row for the second half, and that backfired badly. Like, the bomb squad didn't go off at all. I think the Lions bench added an awful lot more. And whatever, whether the South Africans became, like, it probably wasn't complacency, but whatever happened at that break, whatever momentum was checked during that 15 minutes at half time, they looked like it was almost like they swapped jerseys and came out, because they were making the same mistakes the Lions were making in the first half. They started conceding silly penalties in the same way. Their scrum started to malfunction, and their aerial game just collapsed. The Lions, who had struggled aerially in the first half, suddenly had almost complete dominance. Duan van der Merwe and Ali Price, who I thought were probably the weak links in the Lions team, suddenly were combining for these kick chase wins that were, getting the South Africans on the back foot, putting them under pressure. And maybe that lack of rugby lack of rugby together in the last 18 months to 2 years frazzled the South Africans a little bit. And once they were on the back foot, they started panicking and making mistakes, and they didn't have the crowd to rally them. They didn't have the kind of dominance that they were used to as a team. And they just looked so ordinary, and they also began to tire. And that lack of rugby and that lack of time and the COVID outbreak, I thought Sia Khaleesi was out on his feet. All that started mounting up, and the Lions kept bringing on experienced players, and they kept making good decisions, and they just looked like a much smarter team in that second half.
Yeah, Gordon, what did the Lions change in their approach in the second half?
I actually don't think they changed their approach at all. Right. What I think they did was they scored first, and a little bit of the reason they just sucked the air out of South Africa by scoring that try off a penalty. So the Lions didn't really have to work that hard for their opening try. Like, their opening salvo in the second half was to basically slash a really, really hard worked lead by South Africa just by a penalty, and creeping over the line, and almost butchering it. And the South Africans never really recovered from it.
Oh, but they did, though. I think de Klerk put them back up in front. Like, they completely responded with the try of their own. They were back in front. Like, I thought the Lions were gone again.
The try that try was just pure, like, a hack downfield. Steph Dutoit does a dummy, and they end up going up to it in the field. I think what I was going to say was that Pollard wasn't having a particularly commanding game. The back row battle looked out on his feet. Etzebeth wasn't able to get himself into the game. So while they did come back in and play, the momentum never regathered on their side, and everything they did, the kicks seemed to be a yard too long. The chasers weren't quite there. Where you look at that, like Courtney Laws, they had players. Like Courtney Laws had the type of game that you would expect Etzebeth to have and the influence for him to have. So at crucial moments, the Lions were just able to add again, as Rory was saying, the calmness and the approach and the accuracy that they brought. The South Africans were not able to respond to them. We did say that they were going to be out on their feet, and they actually were out on their feet for large parts of it.
Yeah, and that feels like a frustratingly simple analysis almost to say, Gordon. Like, I didn't want to just throw it out there, but like, if I was chatting more casually with someone, I'd say, well, the South Africans just hit a wall physically, and that's ultimately why the Lions won.
Well, I was thinking about this, that we had the unofficial fourth test, and the Lions really got a rocket fired up them about the level of physicality that was coming their way. So they had an awful lot of value from that. I don't think the South Africans were able to ratchet it up from there, but now they have that. They have something to ratchet up. I'd say there's going to be some changes in the South African team. They're going to come in, and we haven't come up with a name for how South African play rugby. We used to call it Warren ball for Wales under Gaddy, but South Africa are going to play an absolutely brutal game in 6 days' time. They are not like this. They're just going to go back and say, okay, any of this passing stuff, it doesn't matter. They're going to dictate the physical stakes in this, because that's the only weapon they have left to try and turn this tour around.
There will be. Sorry, Rory. Go on, jump in.
If you think about the World Cup, like if you watch the Chasing the Sun documentary and you go back to that time, Rassie Erasmus and Jacques Nienaber had that player group together for an awful long time before the World Cup. They went to Japan, I think it was 3 weeks or 4 weeks before the tournament, and got used to the humidity. They trained in that humidity for all that time that they were there. They had that unbelievable run of cohesiveness and togetherness going into that tournament. We remember that photo of them all looking an incredible nick. And you compare that to now, they haven't played together apart from that one test against Georgia since that World Cup. Their South African players, base players, are playing at a lower level. And we saw that exposed at the Rainbow Cup when the Blue Bulls got blown away by Treviso. And they can't handle long ball and play time, as we saw in the warm-up games. That they're just playing at a slower pace. And because they're not playing Super Rugby against the New Zealand teams, they're not getting exposed to the same level as ever. And the European-based players have been playing largely top 14 in Premiership and Champions Cup rugby, and at the end of a long season. So they're all at this. And then they get this COVID outbreak. What was it? 21 members of their camp got COVID, including Pollard, Sia Khaleesi, and a number of others who played on Saturday. So, like, I tipped South Africa to win the game in the paper on Saturday, so I'm not claiming to be, I got it wrong myself. I underestimated how much all of this would impact them. But maybe we saw it in the SAA game, because they were really good for 30 minutes and they blew the Lions away, but the Lions were physically stronger, and the South African A's produced this unbelievable defensive effort to keep them at bay, and the Lions didn't take their chances. But I do think that all of those factors, we maybe underestimated them going into the game.
Gordon, I think as well, there's a tactical piece here as well. I think the Lions did very well. Yeah. They nullified an awful lot of South Africa's threats. Like, Kobe didn't touch the ball for the whole game. He was busy catching balls in the air. So that was really smart. I can't remember who said it, but like, there is a tactical sharpness to kicking the ball to Colton Cheslin Kobe if you can get him engaged in the air and then on the ground. It's a great way of taking him out of the game, and the Lions did that very, very effectively. Willie LaRue and Pollard, the left and right foot, if you saw the amount that you would have seen how deep Faf de Klerk was passing the ball to them. That's a big win for the Lions, because they have to going that far back to kick is, that's the definition of, you're kicking when the defence is letting you kick rather than the other way around. So I thought the only one couple of players who stood out, I thought Faf de Klerk was excellent for them again. But again, Etzebeth wasn't able to stamp his, when your enforcer is, left tackling scrum halves to the side of trying to hunt down the scrum half at the side of the ruck. I think you've got to give the Lions a fair bit of the tactical credit as well, that they nullified a lot of the South African threats.
Right. So is that kicking from deep, Gordon? Is that due to Lions' pressure?
Yeah, because the first up shots from the Lions across the board, they're the go forward ball that the South Africans got in the A game. in the emerging box game, it was they were kicking on the front. They were passing. If after Clark is only passing, maybe 2 or 3, he's passing to a normal 10 position, who's kicking then onto a team who are moving forward. They had forward momentum onto the kick chase, where it was largely slow to medium ball, and the kickers just dropped into the pocket. But they dropped so far into the pocket, you're going backwards 10 metres to kick to try and regather 20. It became quite hard for the South Africans to compete accurately on their own ball.
And so on Colby, you mentioned him effectively not getting a pass for much of the game, and giving the Lions a lot of credit for that. Is there anything more the South Africans can do to get Cheslin Colby with the ball in his hands, even just once every 10 minutes, even if it's in a Gordon Darcy-esque standing start, to just try and do something? Because to just not have him involved for the whole second 40 just is self-defeating. I'm sure it can't be their plan. So I'm sure the Lions did a lot to cut out passes to him, but there's got to be ways where they can get him more involved in the game, even like come in off your wing and just try and do something, no?
Yeah, like you would think, but again, it's how you're set up. Are you allowed? Are you encouraged to do that type of play? We saw in the latter stages of the World Cup, he did spend again in clutch matches, spent an awful lot of time out on the wing and kind of encouraged to wait for the chances to come to him. But I would think you're going to have to get him for South Africa to look to have a game break. I think we have to put this in context. South Africa did have 3 tries disallowed. So they did create opportunities, and there was a very, very, very fine margins in those disallowed tries. So as poor as they were, they still had 3 tries disallowed, and rightly so. But there still isn't there. But yeah, South Africa are poorer every time Cheslin Colby's not on the ball. So yeah, you want to find ways to get him into it, but that's going to take a big change around. And as Rory's saying, that they haven't spent a lot of time together, so to suddenly start going, okay, we need to get this ball to him, you don't want it to be like a bang of desperation. You want to get this guy on the ball, but it needs to come from the first phase, or you need to create kind of organic situations for him to get the ball where he does his most damage, because at the moment they relied so heavily on the kicking that they never really thought to go somewhere else. But I think you're absolutely right, Joe. He is a player that can create something out of nothing, and they never really looked to him, which was odd.
So you referenced there the disallowed tries, Gordon. Rory, I presume Warren Gatland had his feet up on Saturday night saying, let's send Marius Jonker a nice bottle of red. So there's the Willie LaRue offside from the AM kick where Jonker comes in, and I guess even though he's told the on-field decision is try, and I guess you need something clear to overrule it, he overrules it, even though you couldn't say that LaRue being offside was especially clear, even though most people feel on balance it was probably just about the right decision. So he definitely came to the Lions' rescue there. The Colby knock-on, probably less contentious for the other disallowed try. And then, of course, there's the Hamish Watson non-yellow, which is especially, I think, egregious. And at that stage of the game, I mean, it was really in the melting pot, Rory.
Yeah, I think you're bang on at all 3 of those. And I think the Willie LaRue one was... I find it hard to see how he could definitively rule that out, to be honest. But like Nigel Owens was on commentary, and he said he probably was in front. So maybe it was the right call, but it was if the question was, is there any reason I can't award this try? If you have to come up with evidence to not award a try, I think you're struggling to have clear and obvious evidence that he's in front. But I think that's a toss of a coin, maybe. But the Hamish Watson one is an outrageous decision, really. And for a South African official to make that decision in South Africa, it's a very brave call. I don't know why he made it. I think he could. I don't think any of the Lions could have any complaints if Hamish Watson was given at least a yellow card. And I don't think it was far off a red, to be honest, given what we've seen from those tackles over the years. It probably was yellow, but it was a high-end yellow. I don't think he's been cited at this stage, so maybe I'm wrong on that, but it was definitely 10 minutes in the bin. Now, the Lions will back their fitness to get through that 10 minutes, but certainly the Springboks would think that they would manufacture. What was it they lost by? It was a tight game that they would manufacture enough points, enough momentum in that period. Against a 7-man pack, even though they were being beaten, to turn the tide of the game. So I thought that was a fairly contentious one. I think Jonker was put under pressure by Warren Gatland. Obviously they let it know that they weren't happy. It got reported. They said they were surprised by his appointment. The New Zealand official who was supposed to be in charge pulled out because of COVID. So they had to find someone at short notice, and they went with a South African. And he's back in charge again on Saturday. And he's been living in South Africa all week now. He's in a bubble, I'm sure. He's probably not out amongst the people too much. But he cannot but be aware of the pressure he's under. I mean, there's a South African, I use the word journalist in inverted commas, who went on an awful rant about him on Twitter on Saturday night with just calling him all sorts of things. And if that's someone who's possibly accredited for games, you can only imagine what the fellow on the street is saying about him. So that's a tough situation for him to be in. He's like, for all that he's not a neutral official, he's also under an awful lot of pressure, and he has to go home to live in the place at the end of all this. So I struggle to put myself in his shoes.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I saw even Lawrence Salalio on the Sunday Times yesterday, Gordon, was just initially making the point like it's an embarrassment for World Rugby that Jonker, COVID or no COVID, a South African has to be the TMO for matches this emotional and this difficult.
Yeah, I suppose it's so COVID. I'm sure there's going to be a phrase like if something comes out of this, like wouldn't be anything more. It's almost poetic at this stage. But like it can't be anybody from the Northern Hemisphere really, unless you get a French guy down and it's one of those things that happens, and then everybody just realizes, oh no, this is probably not the best thing, and but you just expect them to do their job, kind of just do your job. You are a TL, the third official or fourth official. That you just do it independently. Try and be as unbiased as you possibly can. I thought he got the tries correct. But the Watson one, again, I was looking at that going, oh, they have dodged a massive bullet there. Legs went horizontal and over his shoulder. And I know he only did it from a kneeling start, but I was just like, how is he still on the pitch? It's absolutely bizarre.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors. The OTB Sports app. Listen, watch, read, all in one.